www.cape.com or call us at 539-95.
This is Pat Thatcher,
And this is Margaret Gifford.
and we're from Sotheby's International Realty.
So, Margaret, if you were going to put your house on the market in the spring of 2015, what would you do right now?
You get your realtor to do a market analysis.
That's right. And hopefully, you get a list of all the things you can do during the winter, so in the spring, your house is picture perfect and ready to go.
You'd paint, you'd wash windows.
And declutter everything. And remember, we have the tools to sell your house.
DSL internet access throughout eastern Massachusetts. Cape.com continues to lead the way with cutting-edge applications, superior networking services, and quality customer support. For more information, visit us at www.cape.com or call us at 539-95.
executive session. I invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to hear a report on the 2-year extension for a solid waste contract with Allied Disposal. Mr. Jack, please, DPW Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a vote request to approve the 2-year extension contract with Allied Waste, otherwise known as Republic Services, in a contract, a negotiated contract value of $2.34 million. This value is approximately $500,000 more than what was budgeted for this term. So that would mean we would have to adjust the budget in the spring in order to accommodate it. So it is higher than our previous contracts, and there are a number of reasons for that. One would be a depressed recycling market, because under this curbside collection contract, they have the solid waste as well as the recyclables. And the recyclables, the product is theirs once they've collected it. So whereas before they were getting paid, now they have to pay. That's one component. Another one would be the distance and time involved between going to Bourne versus going to the Upper Cape Regional Transfer Station. One of the bigger problems with Bourne as far as time goes is when you leave the facility up there, you have to turn right. And in order to turn right and come back to town, you have to go all the way up to the bridge, go around the rotary, and then come back down. So of course in the summertime, that can be problematic on different days. So that adds about $195,000 to the cost of the value of the contract. Then there are increased levels of service and vehicles associated with that. Previously, they were using 5 solid waste trucks and 2 recycling trucks. For this, they'll be looking to use 6 solid waste trucks and 3 recycling trucks, as well as a smaller truck, which would benefit us in the wintertime. Last winter, we had a fair amount of roads that, due to their narrow width and icy conditions, the larger trucks just could not handle it. So it became very, very difficult. Not to mention that over the course of the past year, we have had some service problems, which I'm sure all members of the board are aware of, because it impacted different areas of town at different times where recyclables weren't collected because they were running behind. So they're looking to increase the number of vehicles as well as bring on additional personnel to be able to handle those types of loads. Along with the vehicles, one of the adjustments on a contract like this is that the previous contract was undervalued, and that's primarily because the vehicles were already owned by the company, and as far as amortizing the cost of capital equipment over the life of a contract, these vehicles were actually amortized over a 10-year period because they had the last 2 contracts. So now it's time to replace those vehicles. I'm sure you've seen a number of them on the street that are looking kind of sad. So most recently, they have replaced 3 of them. They went from side loading type vehicles to front loading type vehicles, which makes it easier and safer in order to be able to collect the cans off of the street. So they'll also be looking to add another new truck under this contract, and this would be for a 2-year term that would begin June 1st of this year and end June 1st of 2017. So you have a recommendation by our consultant, Weston and Sampson, and Mr. Mike Scipione is here this evening, and he can answer any questions you may have or of me.
Ms. Moran?
Sure. 2 questions. One, is there any sort of recourse in the contract if there's a staffing problem and therefore they don't show up to pick up? That's question 1. Question 2 is, was there any consideration given to the automated special can trucks that you can lower staffing because the pickup is in fact automated?
First question, as far as recourse, one of the things we did do within this contract was increase the penalty clause based on performance, whereas before the only penalty for poor performance was $25 per house, but we had to identify and document each house that was missed at that time and then try to institute a fine. But we included a $5,000 fine if 25% of a service area is not collected it's a $5,000 fine, and that's very easy to document and very easy to hit them with, and substantially more than what they would have had before. So that's the first question. As far as the type of vehicle and automated collection is safer, it is easier, but it is also actually more expensive. They would have to convert all vehicles to that automated type of vehicle, and the containers alone, for a town our size, and I looked at this before several years ago, we're probably looking in the $1 million range with regard to actually acquiring those types of containers that would have to be placed curbside, because you would need them for both the trash and the recycling as well. So converting it over and actually going to automated would have been a more expensive option. It is where the industry is going in the future. If they already had the vehicles, it would probably be a different story.
How much a can?
I'm sorry?
How much is each can?
I don't recall the unit price. I can find out. I will check on
Because a
it.
lot of other places that I became familiar with the system, the residents just buy the cans, and that would, I think, substantially lower your cost. And I was just curious to see what kind of impact that might have on that $1 million number.
I remember I had looked at it in a couple of different ways. Number one would have been if the town bid containers and acquired the containers for everybody, but that put the town in a position where forevermore the town would have been responsible for the maintenance. So if a wheel breaks, then the town would have to either replace and or repair the unit or replace the unit, or the homeowner would have to do so, versus those that would be provided by a contractor. So you can actually include that under the contract as well, where they provide all the containers, and it's built right into the actual contract value. So there are different ways of actually doing it.
Okay, but my question was, if I bought a can, if I found out it was $250, and therefore I bought it, town doesn't have to maintain it, it breaks, I buy another one. So I was curious if there was, when you looked at those costs, if you took that out of the $1 million number, because the residents were purchasing the cans.
But you'd have to require every single resident
That's how it's done.
to buy one.
That's how it's done.
Right, and I do not recall what that unit cost per container
Okay.
was for either us and or if a homeowner were to acquire it. I do know that if the homeowner were to acquire it, it would have been a higher unit cost for a homeowner to buy it, as opposed to the town going to bid for it and getting them in bulk and the economy of scale. So,
Rebecca?
That's the exact question I was going to ask. Is there a consideration that we would only have a one-year contract while we are looking at this automatic loading? I mean, do we have to have a 2-year contract?
in this one, yes.
In this one, yes.
In this one, yes. There was no option for a 1-year extension on this one. This one was 2 years, but we're already actually,
It's a year and a half because we're already
Right.
4 or 5 months into it.
we're
But I
almost.
really endorse your idea. I think it is, and you did present here a number of years ago, I remember that. And the discussion was they were too big and too awkward and people couldn't handle them. But I'm also in a community outside of Falmouth that I watch this happen. And it's very efficient, it's very clean, families are ready, and they just push the container down their driveway and they know exactly what to do. And I just like the efficiency and the cleanness of it. Now, the price, if that's going up and it's prohibitive for Falmouth, but I'd like for you to look at it and bring some figures, and maybe we can address that issue that you introduced a few years ago.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion?
So you're looking for an approval of the 2-year?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2-year extension. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None, the ayes have it. Second is our
Thank you.
status
Thank you.
report on the water and wastewater projects. Mr. Jack?
I know you're pressed for time, so I will try to be quick. The principles are the same as the doing construction for the contractor. It's
Just,
hourly
you have to get the mic,
here.
have to get you on the microphone. If
I grabbed that by the top, it would have fell apart. The principals are the same. It's Methuen Construction for the contractor. Tata and Howard, CH2, is the design and construction administration engineers, and Mr. Stephen Rafferty is the superintendent. Since the last update, contract value is the same at 40.925, and for the board's information too, the contract values will change on both of these contracts as change orders occur. Change orders are an official amendment to a contract that either increase and or decrease the initial value of a contract. But for right now, it's still the same as it was. So far, we have paid them $5.592 million, which is about almost 14% of the contract completed from a financial perspective. As far as time goes, we have 603 days remaining, so the actual percent of time elapsed on the contract is about 17%. Work change directives to date, we have a lot of requests for information that you see at the top. There were 29 of those, resulting in work change directives, and work change directives are a means of being able to convey information to a contractor for either minor and or more substantive changes of the contract. They don't necessarily always result in change orders, however. At the present time, we do not have any final approved change orders, but there are a number that are in the queue. $41,000 for the transformer, $21,000 for the load bank, approximately $800,000 is a credit for the coatings, and I think $6,700 for the realignment on the raw water pump station intake lines. So when you put it all together, most of them were credits, but the net result will be about a $780,000 credit on the contract. As you can see on the lines for the cash flow, yellow line being what the projected cash flow was going to be, the blue line, and I do realize it's a little difficult to see, is pretty much sitting on top of it, so we're where we need to be for where we are in the contract. I guess I should make a quick mention, well, of something like that. Too late now. Let's see. Got to get this back. Now I'm going to have to run it through. I'm sorry. Thought it was going to be quick, but I guess not. Oh, it's hard to move this arrow with this thing. All right, go there. I apologize. I don't think I've given one of these reports yet where this presentation went the way it was supposed to. One of the things that I did want to mention on the cash flow charts is a difference in terms, if you will, when you're talking about where a project actually is. That's why we talk about where it is percentage-wise on money as well as on time. All the way up to the time that we reach the maximum allocated amount of the contract, which in this case is almost $41 million, as long as we haven't exceeded that amount, I can say that the contract is under budget. Now, maybe we only build a toilet up there, and the whole building still has to be built, but it still could be said that it's under budget. So the question is it on budget? And that's what the lines are trying to show. All right, where it was projected to be and where it actually is at all given points on the graph. So for the site work, on the upper right, it shows that the road, entrance road, was being graded and prepared for the binder coat of asphalt. The second picture is showing you that the asphalt, or the binder coat of asphalt, is down and the entrance was cleaned up quite a bit. Then in the bottom picture here, on the right-hand side of the picture, and I have a larger one of this that I'll be able to show you a little bit better, but on the right-hand side over here, these are the sump areas that I showed you last month, which are the pump sump areas for extracting water and putting water into the tanks themselves. And this here is the beginning of the filter area. So we had 12 structural concrete pours, over 1,000 cubic yards of concrete. The filter area and gallery floor slabs, I'll be showing you those in a minute. The pump chamber walls, as I said, are on the right-hand side of the photo. And north exterior wall fittings, I have another couple photos that I'll be able to show you where the walls are actually starting to go up. And they also completed the large diameter, 30-inch diameter understaff piping for the ozone contactor intake and effluent. Believe it or not, it doesn't do it if you sit here.
Yeah, just drop the microphone down and sit there, Ray, that'll work.
I can push them to it, but at least you have someone to blame if it doesn't work.
So this would have been for the upcoming month because most of the information you just had was for August. So we're already into September, so a lot of this work has already been done. Excavate for the intake pipe installation and pump station, that's a separate portion of the site. 2 intakes are going to be directionally drilled out into the pond, and there'll be a pump station built along the edge of the pond, and a pipe will go from that and feed the plant. Well, that work is expected to start within the next 2 months, so that those intakes will be installed just after November, but the prep work is going to be happening now. Foundation slabs and walls, you're going to be able to, these here, this whole area here is the other side of the picture that I was showing you earlier. So this is taken at ground level, and this is showing basically the pump chamber area. Now here on this bottom picture here, this area up here is this area back here where you see the cranes and the concrete pump. This area in here is going to be where the DAF system goes, and this area right up here is the preliminary work on the filter and filter slab. So right here is bentonite, which is being laid down in anticipation of that. And that's a crane going vertical there, and this one over here is pumping concrete. So the truck's actually up on the top of the hole, and then they have to pump it down in order to get it down there. Oh, that's right, you're doing it now. So this is just a larger picture of that. Go ahead. And then here, this is looking from the other side of the site. So this is from the south side looking north. And you can see one of the foundation walls is going up here. So that'll be up around the entrance area. This is one of the trucks here being pumped in. And this whole area here is going to be where the filters are. And then the DAF units go back here. Over here where you see this crane, this you had seen on previous reports, where the effluent clear well tank, 800,000 gallon tank goes. So that'll be a big underground tank where that crane is sitting right now. The backwash tanks over here are right next to it. So this here is one edge of the building back here that when we get to the final diagram, I'll be able to give you a better perspective of what is and what's where. These are 2 30-inch diameter pipes. So from a perspective, you can see this individual here and just how large those pipes are, but those are for the ozone system. This is the layout of the facility. So this here is the 800,000 gallon underground tank that you will not see again. These are the backwash tanks over here. This area here is the sump, and these are the filters right here. So this is primarily the area that you were looking at on the pictures. And then this is the DAF area here, and then this here is the western end of the building. So the underground tanks will be over here where you see this green. You won't be able to see those at all. And this is predominantly the area of construction that you're seeing on the photographs. So in here is about where the filters are, and just about back here is where the DAF units are. Any questions?
Thank you.
Little Pond Sewer Service Area, the principals haven't changed. It's RBL Construction. GHD is the design and construction administration engineers. Jerry and Amy are the superintendents on the project. Project was $20,418,000. We have paid them $2.2 million to date, so that's roughly 11% of the contract value. As far as time goes, this is a 26-month project. There are 687 days remaining. 103 days since we actually started the project, so they're about 13% through on the time of the project. RFIs, or request for information, there was a dozen, and this was only up, there's actually been several more since then, but this is only up until the end of August. Field orders to date, there were 7. We have 3 pending change orders. There's actually 5 now, but this was as of the end of August. Potential change orders at that time were 28,000. Current value is closer to about 45,000. As you can see on the chart, the amount expended to date is pretty much matching the graph, so we're on target with regard to expenditures. This is to show, the picture up at the top here is to show a road where the main was installed and the base temporary paving is down. This is, I believe, Alma Road, which is showing the restoration of a trench on Alma Road, and you can see they were just finishing up because they still had the pipe over there. So up until August, they had completed the main line on Young Road, and then they were going to continue the sewers on Alma, Lake Lehman, begin the main sewers on Worcester Court, Johnson, Holland, and Raymond Streets, which virtually all of these are actually already done by now. And they were beginning the low-pressure mains on multiple roads, and I'll name some of those roads on the next slide to show where we are today. So for this month, they were going to and have on some of these completed the main installations on Alma Road, Johnson, Raymond, Holland, and Worcester Court. Continue installations on Lake Lehman, Jericho Path, and I know I have Alma up there twice because they were going to continue it as well as complete it, so it went on both lists. Raymond Road and Worcester Court. Low pressure mains, Grand Ave, Elysian, Dartmouth Ave and Dartmouth Court, Hawthorne, Montgomery Courts, Jericho Path and Worcester Court, and began the gravity main on Spring Bars Road this week. So that's kind of the introduction into the Mara Vista area. So time-wise, they're actually doing very well. They'll also be, they're working now on Jericho Path, which is, once again, that's one of the deeper areas in this geographic area that they have to contend with, but they're doing well on that as well. This is just a picture showing you a manhole installation. So these go in sections. So this is just the top of the first section, and multiple sections will go on top of it. Down here you can see the opening where the main line pipes go in. This is an example of a sewer lateral. The main can be very deep down here in the street, but then the sewer lateral comes up with a chimney or a riser so that it's not as deep as the main is itself, and then it's extended over to the curb line. A 90-degree fitting goes on right here, and then a riser brings it up to the surface, and down around there is where a homeowner would dig it up on their side to make the ultimate connection, and this is all you would see on the street side. But that would be a gravity sewer lateral. This is showing a low-pressure main installation. So the trench is somewhat shallower here. This is only about 5 feet deep. This is the actual main over here. This is high-density polyethylene, and it's a fusion-welded pipe, so it goes in a continuous line, if you will. They butt the joints, fusion weld them in the field. This line here is about 4-inch. These low-pressure mains are installed on various streets at 2, 3, or 4-inch. So it gets progressively larger. This map is giving you an idea of how much has been completed so far. So the dark black line around here represents the sewer service area. The red that you see on here in a couple of different streets here is a gravity main where it's going to go. And the blue that you see on some of these other roads, here, and all up here, those are the low pressure mains. And the yellow lines are the main lines that have already been completed. So based on this, I would probably estimate for the Falmouth Heights area here, as it's shown, they're probably about 60 to 70% complete on the mains. This is the whole sewer service area. So this is Mara Vista up here, and it comes back down around to this is the piece of the map that you just saw for the Falmouth Heights area. So all of this is outlining what main line has been installed. The blue parcels that you see here, that's showing you that that whole thing is complete. The main has been installed and all laterals have been installed. So that's what they'll be doing with these other yellow lines where the mains are, is they'll actually be installing all the laterals for those this month and next month. Over here, this is Jones Road, and so this is the Admiralty up here. This is showing this main has already been installed. That was put in last spring, through the intersection up there. That work that was going on in the intersection wasn't the state, it was us putting that main in. This main here will then extend all the way down so that there'll be a sewer service area here, and Alphonse Street is down on the end where the school property is, and that's where a lift station is going to be installed down here. Spring Bars Road, this is where they're starting this week. They're going to be putting this in. Then we have the mall here, and there's going to be a lift station right there, so that's the second lift station. So the lift station will be starting up, I'm not sure if that's going to be this fall or the beginning of the spring, okay? But the main is going in, and then as this main goes in, it moves into the upper reaches of Mara Vista. This is all predominantly gravity main. The southern portion down here is predominantly low pressure main. And right along Mara Vista down here, we're going to be meeting with the contractor this week for directional drilling to install those low pressure mains. So instead of just going down and ripping one massive hole through Mara Vista for the whole project, down there is very conducive to directional drilling. So there'll be an entry pit and a receiving pit, and the question will be how far the contractor can do that main underground without disturbing it. One of the reasons that's really beneficial is because when we put this 12-inch water main down Mara Vista several years ago, that's one of the thickest streets I've seen. It's over 12 inches thick on asphalt. So that's a lot of cutting of asphalt to trench that road. Go ahead. And that was it. Any questions? Yes.
Fran, I wanted to ask the coordination when you put the laterals in with the property owners. I see you're already putting laterals in, and as I understood it, you were going to put some kind of a flag there, and then the property owner's plumber would basically say, well, would move that flag to where they wanted the lateral to end up.
Yes.
That coordination has been going along? I mean, have we been able to keep up with the property owners so that they know they have to make that decision?
Yes, and to date, for all of the work that you've seen thus far, I'm only aware of 2 errors that were made on those, where a lateral went in not quite in the place where it was supposed to go. So that's actually pretty good. So yeah, the coordination is going very well. We're fortunate to have a couple of our plumbers are pretty good at this. One in particular has led the way for many of these, so we're very fortunate with that.
Now, where there was an error made, I assume it was the contractor's responsibility to correct that? Or was
Not-
that?
No, not in that case. Though I know the one case where the error was made, we'll be able to correct it by deflecting the pipe. All right, so the connection will stay. There's no change in effort there. It'll just be a change in direction when the final installation goes in for the homeowner.
Just a personal question. Is there ever a time that the public will be able to take a look at that wastewater plant as it's being built?
The water plant,
The water filtration plant.
Yes.
while it's being built, will be difficult because for all intents and purposes, the contractor owns the site. I mean, we own it, don't get me wrong, but the liabilities are huge whenever the public enters the site. So even if the gates are open during a day when the contractor is working, it could be done by invitation, but to just show up and/or go on site, they would be asked to leave.
No, I didn't think about that as much as by invitation.
Yes?
I think the public should see it before the top, as you look at it, becomes the bottom.
Yes.
I'll talk to you later on it.
Mr. Finneran?
Pass those down that way, please.
This is a question from Mr. Jack.
Yeah. I don't know if it's- can you pass those that way? Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. I've been approached by numerous people over the last couple of weeks, homeowners, contractors, and even some people in the employ of the town regarding something that fell through the cracks, I think, in the design of this. And that is the homeowners that have the grinder pumps and also have a Title V septic system in their backyard. It would cost some, currently they're supposed to abandon their Title V tank and crush it and fill it in. That'd be at least $1,000. A Title V tank, as you can see by the things I have in front of you, is just the same as a pump chamber for a pump, a grinder pump. The only difference is the access holes on the top. Everything else, they're identical. And I believe this is in your power, if you could allow the homeowners to maintain their Title V tanks as a pump chamber, it would save them at least $1,000, depending on the distance from the house, and if it happens to be headed in the right direction of the sewer, it could easily save them a few more $1,000s in digging and excavation. The only difference is, as I say, is the size of the lids on the top, and that's for man access, and any normal sized man can access in a 20-inch hole. I've been in an 18-inch hole before, and I weighed more. Also, the people that had these tanks would, instead of having a 75-gallon capacity for the pump that we're proposing to purchase, they would have 1,000 or a 1,500-gallon capacity. And if they were to lose the power, that would give them 10 days. You could put an alarm on the top so they could be aware when it was actually filled. And it's just relief that these people can have. And as I say, I think it just slipped through the cracks. You know, the permit issue, I mean, you guys gave some relief to people. I mean, it was a small amount. Between the cost of filling this tank in and everything, the potential savings in excavation, and the fact that that would actually leave the homeowner the ability not to purchase a generator to power their pump, it's just relief that I think you can provide. And like I said, I think it just fell through the cracks. And I mean, when you're talking $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 maybe in some instances, I think it's something that you really should look at, and you can see that you know, those are the actual cut sheets from the manufacturer, and what I said is factual, and I mean, you can follow the rest of it logically.
Well, thank you for the suggestion. The idea that someone can take their $20,000 Title V and actually have it go forward to this, if it can work out, it's a great idea, so I will encourage that we look into it. We do need to move on to our public hearing. Thank you very much, Mr. Jack, for your report. We have a public hearing on the collection container bylaw as provided under Chapter 119 of the Code of Falmouth. A public hearing will be held in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Tuesday, September 22nd, 2015 at 6:30 p.m. to establish and promulgate fees which are effective as of Wednesday, September 23rd, 2015. To be charged by town departments and agencies except as provided by Mass General Law, School Department, Planning Board, Library, Town Clerk, Town Treasurer, and collective taxes. The proposed changes in fees are as listed. The department will be under the Board of Selectmen, and the collection container permit fee it's proposed is $75 with a filing fee of $10. And that is for our discussion tonight, to either vote that or to make a change to it. I think you all know the container bylaw that has been gone through through the town meeting fairly recently. The one thing we do need to be aware of from some correspondence we've received is we cannot have this be a fee that is in any way punitive or prohibitive. That it would not be appropriate for us to create a fee that was so high as a way of saying basically you can't have these containers because we're charging so much money that no one would ever do it. The Attorney General would come back and say that that was not within what the bylaw's intent was.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just comment, the recommended amounts, the $75 container fee and the $10 filing fee, are reviewed by staff members that would be involved in this process. This is the last step necessary in order for us to begin implementation of this important bylaw, and we would respectfully recommend the board's consideration. I'm assuming you have to take comment as well.
Yep.
If there is any.
Okay. Any comment from the board?
Yes. This has been on the minds of a lot of people for some time now, because the current containers that we have now that are just spread around town are very unsightly, and they also, you will find that there are objects there that really don't belong. I mean, we saw a picture the other day, one down on next to the Getty station, where there was a grill and then a mattress, and then a desk, and then, I mean, a few other things. And it's really, these containers are really for clothing. And they're not very well maintained by whoever the owners are. So I think this bylaw addresses those concerns. It identifies who the people are. I mean, they actually have to file and make an application. Right now, these companies just put them down there, and maybe the owners of the businesses know who they are. Maybe they do, but we don't know who they are. So this way, there'll be an application process that the person wanting to put a container there has to complete. And then there's a filing fee that goes along with the application. And then there's a fee for just having it there. And I mean, if you read some of the stories on the internet, you find that these are all over the world. There are also some people make an awful lot of money off them, but they don't take care of them. So I think by having a bylaw that governs this. The other piece of the bylaw is that they can only be placed in B2 zones. And I had asked Julian if he could send us a map of where the B2 zones are. And there are not that many of them. Obviously, they're Main Street, Route 28. Certain sections of 28A in North Falmouth are B2 zones. I think Davisville, there's a corner or two on Davisville Straits that's B2. But there are not very many places. So it would be really easy to know if they're appropriately cited or not appropriately cited. And by having the application and having zoning enforcement be responsible, it gives us a little more control over who puts them there, how they're being used, whether or not they're being picked up appropriately, and the fact that stuff isn't being allowed to be deposited all around them.
Well, the bylaw is, in effect, all we really have to decide is what's the fee? What's the fee, the permit fee for it? And that's what the hearing is tonight.
Yeah, but we never really had a long discussion about the bylaw before. I know it was approved by town meeting last April. But then it also had to have some enforcement to it, and there was no real provision about the application or the fee of the application. So I think this gives us a little more control.
Absolutely. Rebecca?
Do we actually have to have these containers in town? I mean, do we have to accept them if someone comes in and says they want to put a container in? I think it's a health issue. And so my first question is...
I'm going to keep us on our discussion. The discussions, that was on the bylaw, that was at town meeting. Our job tonight is to follow the guidance of town meeting that said that this bylaw was going to exist and wanted to have a fee for it.
So we don't have any say in having them removed or even allowing them?
Mr. Chairman, I can make a quick comment.
Sure.
Town councils advise us we're unable to prohibit them, you can only regulate them. And that's what this bylaw proposes to do.
And if they don't follow the regulation, is there some type of a fine? Or,
yes.
And can they be removed once that all happens?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Still, I'd like the health department to be in on this. I think they more than just...
They're involved in enforcement.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
So since we can't find the page in here, what is the proposed fee?
$75.
For annually?
Correct.
And plus a filing fee.
Plus the filing fee, which is
$10.
what, like $10?
$10.
Okay.
And do we have a date when this goes into? I know
Tomorrow.
that the bylaw is already in effect, but the filing fee and the...
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
I mean, somebody, we certainly could consider having a little bit more. One of the things I want to make sure is that it isn't so much that people just don't bother going through the process. I do want to make sure that we're actually getting things done, going through the process, have the applications done, because then we have the ability to regulate it. I guess if they don't bother getting the application, we can also have them removed.
Well, since we review fees every year anyway, we could start out with that fee. And if we find out that we need to increase it or do something else with it because it's not, they're not maintaining them properly or whatever, or there's too much enforcement, it's costing too much to enforce it, then we might want to increase the fee. But we can bring that back again next year,
Absolutely.
I think.
Okay.
So I think it's appropriate what's being proposed, so I would move it.
Do we have any public comments since this is a public hearing on fees? Okay.
Just a quick question. Surrounding towns, what are the existing fees? Do we know?
To the best of my knowledge, surrounding towns don't regulate these. Only a few in the Commonwealth do. And this is reviewing our existing fee schedule. This is closely related to fees that are set in similar areas, like temporary collection containers, for instance. So we've discussed this, and with town council, we feel this is the reasonable place to be. As Selectman Flynn mentioned, you can change this every year if you want to, but it has to be reasonable and can't be punitive.
One other, it may be insulting to suggest to those who are going to respond to the applications and approve them, but ask that they give them the map of the B2 zones so that the people who want to apply for putting one of these down know where they can put them, and they just don't put them anywhere, which they do now.
We have a listing of all the companies that are involved in these,
Okay.
and we're going to do a mailing to all of them. We're awaiting only the action of the board tonight.
Okay.
I'll second Mary Pat's motion.
Well, first I have to have a motion to close the hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's a hearing. Sorry.
So there's no public comment?
I move to close the hearing.
Second.
We have motion and a second to close the hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. And now you have a motion from Pat to
Oh, I move to approve the fees.
of $75 for the
And the
permit and $10
$10
filing fee. Okay, we have a motion,
Second.
second from Mr. Patterson. Any further discussion, Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, it would seem to me that these containers have to have the permission of the property that they're located on. Is that correct? I mean, it would sound like you can just pop them in anywhere. You can't do that. You
No.
have to have the permission of the
Private property.
property owner. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, the ayes have it. Next item on our agenda is the capital improvement plan presentation. I would assume this is going to be more than 10 minutes that you want to present.
Yeah, this is quick, if you don't
Really?
mind.
I
It'll be
don't-
more than 10 minutes.
I don't think it is quick. I
Right.
think Jennifer can do it quick, but I have a lot of questions about it. And I don't know whether it's appropriate to have her come back another night after the presentation.
Well,
where
we are
can have a
reconvening at 9 o'clock
discussion.
tonight, and so what I was suggesting, unfortunately for Jenna's sake, I would rather
Have her
put it
present.
on the table and come back to it at 9 o'clock and finish the rest of our business before the planning board.
All right, you want me to come back at 9?
Yeah,
Okay.
just have it start off the whole thing then.
Do you want a motion to that effect?
I don't think we need one.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, so the next item of business is the release of the final payment of $220,000 to Falmouth Housing Corp. for their Tanfield Apartments, 300 Woods Hole Road. I think there were quite a few of us at the ribbon cutting for that ceremony. It's a great spot, and this is the final piece of the payment of
I
that.
thought we were going to move on with the planning board and take this up.
I just thought we had these 3 or 4 items that would take 10
Doing
minutes.
that at 7.
Okay.
So moved. Yep. An authorized payment.
Okay, we have a motion to authorize a payment of $220,000 for the Falmouth Housing Corp.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The ayes have it. Next item is to appoint the Selectmen's representative to the Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative. We had discussed this at a previous meeting, but needed as an agenda item. Do I have a motion to appoint a representative?
I make the motion that Sue Moran is the representative from the Falmouth Selectmen to the Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative
Second?
for a term of 3 years.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Sue.
And the last piece of business before we invite the planning board to join us is to authorize the temporary license to use a portion of Depot Avenue bus station as a detour for bike path. This has to do with one of the largest elm trees that we have in town, which is getting some emergency repairs right now, some trimming and some cabling to try to keep it as safe as we can. And I think the work is happening fairly quickly, ideally so it can be done before Thursday's Wounded Warrior project. But right now, there is a detour that's set up going through the bus station back area.
And Mr. Chair, I noticed that Mr. Galasso is in the audience, so he may have some information on the Falmouth EDIC's view on that request.
Mr. Lasso, would you like to comment on our joint request for this licensing?
Yes, Michael Glasso, Chairman of the EDIC. Don't really have anything to add, just want to thank Peter and Rocky for going out there real quick and getting this fixed. We've submitted our letters to the state to let them know that this is a temporary fix, so with this license and the agreement, we'll send it on to the state, but I think we're ready to go, and there's a little bit more work that's going to be done out there, I think, tomorrow, so that we can accommodate the event.
So I entertain a motion to approve this license and to authorize the chairman to sign the license agreement.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The ayes have it. We're going to now adjourn our meeting and rearrange so we can have the planning board join us, and we will be planning on going back into our, reconvene our meeting at 9 o'clock, or at least the completion of the planning board joint meeting with the selectmen.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. And we're in adjournment.
I'd like to call the September 22nd Planning Board meeting to order, and I'll ask Brian Curry, our town planner, to introduce our first presenter.
Thank you, Jim. The first item on the agenda is a Route 28 corridor study with McMahon Associates. We have with us tonight Maureen Schluck and Colleen Medeiros from McMahon Associates. They're going to run through a PowerPoint presentation, give you all the gory details you need with regards to their findings and suggestions for roadway improvements along the corridor. And with that, with your permission, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for your time at this meeting. We're happy to be here to present. We were last here in March to present on this project, and at that point we were just getting into it. So as you'll recall, there were 4 tasks, and our first task was to look at existing conditions, secondly, identify deficiencies, and then to develop alternatives, and lastly, to prepare the master plan for transportation. So at that point, we're right between tasks 1 and 2. At this point, we're further along between tasks 3 and 4, so we'd like to give you an update. So the things that we'll talk about tonight, we'll talk about the key findings at our first public meeting. I'll walk you through what we did to get to future traffic year projections. We'll quickly go through the deficiencies just to remind you from the last meeting what we saw at the key intersections and on a corridor-wide basis. And then we'll get into the conceptual improvements that we've come up with. And at each of the 9 key locations and along the corridor, we've developed short-term and long-term improvements that we'd like to put before you tonight. So just to give you some of the key elements that came out of the first meeting, one of the unique things about Falmouth and Route 28 corridor is that the traffic is pretty consistent throughout the day. You don't experience the standard morning and afternoon peak hour volumes that you often see on roadways. And so this just gives more credibility to the types of improvements that we want. It's not like you're just addressing a 1-hour peak. You're really looking at the whole day. Throughout the corridor, there's a lack of pedestrian and bicycle facilities, so we had a goal to try to improve that. We had looked at accident data along the corridor. We identified a crash cluster on T-Ticket Highway, so we gave that some special attention. And so there are 9 study area intersections. 5 of them are unsignalized and 4 of them are signalized. We came up with roadway improvements for each type of user anticipated, and we looked for opportunities to enhance the parking and wayfinding. So let me just walk you through what we did to come up with future traffic conditions. We reached out to the Cape Cod Commission and to the town of Falmouth to get a good feel for how traffic is growing in this area. And what we did is we applied a 0.5% annual growth rate to the background traffic in the study area. There were no significant generators that had to be considered in addition to the background traffic. So basically it was, increase the traffic volumes and then look at the operations. And so you may recall this graphic from last time. This has been updated to show the 10-year traffic projection volumes and how we anticipate traffic will operate. So when we're measuring operations at intersections, we talk in terms of level of service, and it's rated from A through F. So level service A, B really is hardly any delay. And then when you get to level service C, D, which is shown in yellow up here, that's your average delays. When the intersections begin to reach capacity and begin to fail, that's what we're referring to as E and F, and we're showing that in red. And what we see, the results here are pretty consistent with what we had reported last time for existing conditions. So next, we looked at the unsignalized intersections, and our first wave through was to say, do any of these meet warrants for signalization? Not that you automatically put a signal there, but let's just look at the volumes and see how they compare with some criteria that has been established by the Federal Highway Administration. So when we look at the 5 unsignalized intersections, we looked at volume warrants. So we looked at the top 8-hour volumes during the day. We looked at a 4-hour and the top peak hour. And of those 5 unsignalized intersections, you can see 3 of them did meet at least 1 warrant for signalization. The 2 that did not were Sandwich Road at T-Ticket and Palmer Avenue. So I will quickly take you through the deficiencies, and then we'll get into the part that you really want to hear about, the recommendations. When we looked at deficiencies in the area, we looked on a corridor-wide basis at the study area intersections, and then we also considered parking and wayfinding. So when we look at a corridor-wide basis, there's some general statements that can be made throughout. The biggest one probably being the lack of bicycle amenities. Secondly, the inconsistent amenities for pedestrians. There's, places where we're lacking sidewalks or curb ramps, or even the signal equipment is not up to date for pedestrians. There's also a lack of wayfinding in the downtown area. There's missing crosswalks. When we look at T-Ticket Highway, which was the area that had the crash clusters, we note that there's numerous curb cuts, which probably contributes to the accident rate in that area. So next, I'd like to just walk through the 9 study area intersections and talk about each one in terms of deficiencies. We're going to start at the northeasterly end of the project, so I'm at Route 28 and Mara Vista Avenue Extension. This intersection is currently signalized. It operates with poor levels of service. It experiences a high crash rate. The signal equipment at this location is outdated, particularly for the pedestrian signals. When we look at Route 28 and Sandwich Road, this is our first unsignalized intersection. And what's happening at this roadway is that we're experiencing high speeds, as you can guess from the geometry. We've got like a sweeping turn there. Also high crash rates, and we have sight distance issues based upon the roadway geometry. So these are the things that we're aiming to improve upon. As we continue to move southerly and we get to Route 28 and Jones Road, this intersection is currently under construction with a MassDOT project. And what they're doing under that project, I know the construction was stopped during the summer and will reconvene in the fall. So there was a new signal installed, the turn lanes were formalized, and pedestrian crossings and bike lanes were added at this intersection. Next intersection that I'd like to speak about is Route 28 at Dillingham Ave, Spring Bars Road. This unsignalized intersection has poor levels of service. It has a high crash rate, and just to note, it did meet warrants for signalization. When we look at Route 28 and Falmouth Heights Road, again, we have an odd-shaped T intersection, a wide geometry. We're seeing poor levels of service, and this intersection does meet warrants for signalization. Moving along to Route 28 and Gifford Street. Now we're in the downtown area. You can see we have this T intersection, which is unsignalized. Again, poor level of service, high crash rate. Its offset geometry with King Street adds to the complications. And Route 28 at Palmer, we get a lot of these T intersections with sweeping right turns. So again, this intersection is unsignalized. It did not meet warrants for signalization. But the geometry out here, particularly that wide curve for the right turns, becomes problematic for peds and bikes crossing this location. And then as we move on to the hospital intersection, this signalized intersection experiences average delays. What we did notice out there that traffic tends to spike at certain times, based upon the shifts at the hospital, and other factors in the area. So we looked for solutions to how we could handle those spikes in traffic.
Can I make a comment there? Since
Sure.
I use that intersection every day. The other impact on that is when the ferries come in.
Yes.
Just sort of, I didn't see that on there, but that makes a huge difference every time, especially in the summer, when those ferries run every hour, every 2 hours. Now that intersection backs up every way.
Right. So it's not backed up all day long, but it's like you said, when the ferry releases, it happens. When the hospital shifts turnover, it happens. So we tried to.
surprised in your grading system that you had that higher than all these other intersections. And I think for most people would say that's the worst intersection for delays.
Right.
For it only to be in the CD range as opposed to the F range for other ones.
Right. You know what? So when we do capacity analysis, we generally do the volume over the course of an hour. But you're right. If we broke it down by peak 15 minutes and analyzed 15 minutes against one after the other, we would see one portion of that hour is quite a bit worse than the rest. And we recognize that, and we looked for a solution to address that.
And one other comment, the steamship has larger boats and faster boats. So the number of times that those boats come into Woods Hole are more frequent, and there are more people and more cars on each one. So it isn't like it used to be. It's not. They're not the same boats anymore.
Yeah.
Actually, Jim's the chair, so I should have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Defer.
Just, Jim, through you?
Yes, Sam.
I think one other thing that happens is there's a lot of commuter traffic early in the morning that's going south through that intersection, heading down towards Woods Hole for the Oceanographic and other businesses down in that area. I notice a huge backup stretching sometimes almost all the way to where the lane drops down from 4 to 2 lanes. So I know what you're saying. And if you look at the average, that's just a peak that occurs within less than an hour. But boy, I sure get some complaints about it.
Right, so the issue here is to try to deal with those queues and to try to keep readjusting conditions at that intersection to address the spikes. And we did look at that, we recognize that. Moving on to Jones Road at Gifford Street. This intersection has poor levels of service, high crash rate again. Again, you see some pretty wide open geometry, large sweep-in radii that we would probably look to improve. As we get into the parking in the downtown, you probably recall this slide from the last presentation. Really what we were highlighting is where there is parking, on-street parking and off-street parking. And again, this is just calling it out. So as you know, all the parking is free and generally unregulated. And when we come back to recommendations on parking, we'll speak to that. The off-street parking is a little underutilized. While there's always people in those lots, there's generally always a space available too. So every town has its own parking problems, whether it's too much parking, too little parking. I think here people would feel like there's too little parking, but there may be an opportunity to spread some of the parking, take some of it off of the downtown streets, move it into these off-street lots or other locations. So at this point, I'm going to have Colleen speak to you on the improvements that we came up with. I'll come back at the end and talk again on more parking and wayfinding.
Thank you, Maureen. I get to talk about some of the exciting part now about what we are going to propose for these issues and deficiencies we just talked about. Just want to go over, we're going to go through a quarter-wide, intersection-specific, going to look at some fatal flaws. We look not just going to present the short-term and long-term solution, but we're also going to let you know other things we looked at and why they didn't work at that intersection. So we're going to start with corridor, and we're going to start in the downtown area down here. This is what we're considering a fatal flaw. And what we looked at was the existing cross-section right here of what the roadway looks like, and we looked at potentially adding bicycle lanes. And as you can see, we're limited with right-of-way here in the downtown, and that's pretty much because of the storefronts are right up against the sidewalk. So in this scenario, we found that the existing cross-section works today. We need the on-street parking is necessary, that's being utilized, and that should remain. This isn't a great scenario where you want to put a minimum width bicycle lane against minimal 10-foot travel lane, and then against parking lanes. It's just not a safe condition where you're trying to squeeze too much. And the whole purpose of this project is to balance users along the corridor, pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles. But in this situation, we found that it wasn't a safe solution. What we're going to recommend for bicycles in this area is to put them onto parallel routes, such as Catherine Lee Bates, which is a more inviting parallel route. Today it has Sharrows painted on the road, but we feel like that's a more that's a better solution, because here you won't have potential car doors opening into bicycle lanes. We just think that will be a better solution. And what we're going to propose, though, for the downtown area is, move the bicycles off into parallel routes. But we really want to prioritize the pedestrian. This is a great little local village. It has lots of shops and people walking. So we want to improve this scenario for pedestrians. And what we're proposing we're calling them bump outs or curb extensions. You have some today, but they're not at every location. And what that does is it puts the pedestrian further out into the street and lets the drivers be able to see them instead of them just popping out of a parked car. And it lets the pedestrian feel a little bit more secure. It's safe for them to actually be able to see gaps in traffic. And then also from a short term for downtown, I think what we recommend is for the wayfinding and the parking solutions that would help the area.
Can I just ask a question?
Yep.
On each one of the curb extensions, does that take up a parking space?
No, I'm not sure on the exact each one, but today what you have in a lot of these spaces is it's a painted hatched area, so a parked car can't park there today. So there's the room to add it. So I think maybe overall we'd be losing maybe 1 or 2 spots. This really isn't going to change the dynamic of on-street parking. Today there is the ability to add them. They're just not formalized. Today they're just painted almost on the street.
Okay.
2 other things we're recommending is on some high crossing locations such as Library Lane down by Peg Noonan. We want to raise that crosswalk to make it further enhanced to slow vehicles down so they have to go over, such as in this bottom corner. You can kind of see what it might look like. It's a little bit of a speed hump, but it raises the crosswalk, so cars have to further slow down. And then 2 locations as well we recommend. You can see over in the right corner some in-pavement lighting for at night. These are more of high crossing locations that are near the off-street parking, as well as some restaurants and bars that will be open more. So we feel like that might be a further enhancement. So now we're staying on the corridor improvements, but now we're moving up to T-Ticket Highway. And as Maureen said, this was a crash cluster that we identified. This is the area pretty much from around the mall and up to Sandwich Road. What our long-term solution here is we're recommending a 2-way left turn lane. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but as you can see, it's a painted center turn lane. And it allows left turns in both directions to sit in that lane to make their left turn. It also allows vehicles exiting from all the curb cuts to exit into that lane too, to get a gap in traffic. We're proposing the minimum required width is a 12-foot 2-way left turn lane, and that's what we're proposing to address the crash and safety problems. As well, it will help operations. So now instead of a vehicle, a left turn sitting, blocking everybody, now the left turns can get out of traffic and the through vehicles can continue to move. So we're seeing that there's also a safety and an operational benefit.
Yes, Sam?
Ask you a question. What about pedestrian crossings for this configuration? Does that become more problematic for a pedestrian, or is it actually a safer zone, so to speak, if you can get into the center?
It does increase the roadway width, so it's a longer crossing for a pedestrian. But we didn't particularly look at providing more crossings in between on this section of roadway.
And if I could just add, as you can see on that.
If you mic, please.
Most of the times as we approach an intersection, that 2-way left turn lane becomes a left turn lane just for that approach. So you can see if we assume we're going northbound, it becomes a northbound left turn lane. So the crosswalk situation really at the intersection won't be changed because those turn lanes are there today. So.
With this, I'll get into, as you can see, with the green and the brown on our legend, we're also proposing we're calling a multi-use path on this section of roadway. I'll get into that in a little bit further, but generally fits within the right-of-way, but it might need to take a little bit of minor land taking. You can see that those yellow lines are the existing right-of-way, but we feel like this is an important corridor where we need to balance all of the users, and that to fit the appropriate lanes for each user, that their minor takings might be required. With the bike pedestrian accommodations on T-Ticket Highway, we looked at putting the bikes in the road, in a bike lane, a minimum 6-foot bike lane, and as you can see here, you'll see there will be sidewalks on each side, 6 feet, a 6-foot bike lane, and then we go into an 11-foot travel lane, and then that 12-foot center two-way left turn lane. The available right-of-way today is around 50 feet. With this proposed layout would be required about 58 feet. As I mentioned, we're trying to balance all users, and this scenario we didn't move forward with because we're just not safe with putting the minimum width for all of these lanes with each other. A minimum bike foot lane with no buffer, a minimum travel lane, and the minimum center two-way left turn lane. We just feel like there was maybe something else we could look at that might provide a more safer alternative. And since that was more of a bare bones design, what we looked at was, we're still looking at possibly a 58-foot proposed right-of-way cross-section. But what we did now is we separated, as you can see on the right, we're proposing a 10-foot multi-use path. And this will be a two-way path that will provide bicyclists and pedestrians to both use that, so they can travel the Route 28 corridor. They'll be separated by a 5-foot buffer, landscape buffer, as well as then a 2-foot shoulder, and then the travel lane. On the left-hand side, it will just be a 5-foot sidewalk. This is similar on the Cape, on 151 in Mashpee. The multi-use path exists, Route 28 in Centerville, and 132 in Hyannis. This multi-use path also exists.
Jim, what do you do with the curb cuts along that multi-use path? And the problem with 28 is there are all these other places you mentioned don't have nearly the number of curb cuts that we have there, and I worry about that bike path, thinking they're going to just be able to move right along it without being aware of crossing traffic.
Right, there'll have to be some enhancements at those driveways to further alert those exiting drivers. You'll also, it's proposed on the right-hand side, and I'm just thinking about the number of curb cuts. There may not be as many on that side, whereas the left-hand side has a lot of larger and wider ones. But we propose that might be, this little section of town might be more difficult, but we feel like this is safer than putting them in the road.
This multi-use is on the north side of the street?
East side, I guess, technically, or north.
Oh, I know it runs.
Crane Appliance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I would call that the south side, but okay, I understand it. Okay.
I mean, it could go on either side. That's a minor detail.
All right.
So now we're going to move into the intersections. We're at Mara Vista Ave Extension, and this is our fatal flaws. Just quickly go over. We looked at a roundabout. It doesn't fit. It's an existing signal. You don't want to take away the signal. It works, fairly well. Just the added cost of putting in a roundabout, taking out a signal. We looked at fixing the signal from a timing standpoint, optimizing the existing timings. That's a short-term recommendation, but from a long-term, it needs more help than just that. We also looked at just maybe striping another lane, but you really need to do some geometric improvements. And this is our short-term recommendation. It's mainly safety recommendations to improve the intersection, to address the pedestrian signal heads that are outdated. They have the don't walk, it's all letters. Now, this is a new standard, is the hand symbol as well as a countdown clock. We want to make sure bicycle detection is installed on the roadway so a bike can get the signal to call and when it's there, as well as just do the signal retiming and other safety improvements, clean up vegetation for sight lines. Here's our long-term solution. As I mentioned, will include some geometric improvements. The major changes will be I guess we can go from a southbound, or it would be a westbound, but it's a left turn onto Mara Vista Ave from Route 28, as you can see on the right-hand side. And also, we added a northbound, right turn lane on Mara Vista Ave extension. This will help improve the operations and the safety. Today, we saw a lot of crashes with that left turn on Route 28, so now we're giving them a space and a phase for the signal. And as you can notice, this will be a recurring theme. The green is that grass buffer, and the brown is that multi-use path. We're proposing this multi-use path for the entire corridor. So now we have a continuous bicycle facility for users on Route 28.
Can I ask you a question? Is there a particular kind of location where you would not have a pedestrian button or a signal to stop traffic for pedestrians? Like when you're in a state highway roadway, is there ever a situation where the pedestrian is instructed to wait so traffic wouldn't be bogged down?
With the signal?
Well, rather than, I wasn't clear on your last slide whether or not you were saying that when the bicycles approach, does that signal the traffic lights to change for the pedestrian?
No, for the bicycle, it's, say there's no one else on the road and a bicycle pulls up and it reaches a red signal. Normally, if the regular vehicle loops can't pick up, they only can pick up a car because of the heavy magnetism of the metal. And a bike only has a little bit of metal, so you need a special loop to make sure it can identify there's a bike waiting that needs a green light. So that's the bike improvement. And then from the pedestrian, there's those little indications of when you push the button, then it can tell you to go or not go. Those are just outdated, and we want to bring those up to standard.
Well, I understood the signage.
Yeah.
But my question is, do you always provide the button for the pedestrian, even if it's in a state highway roadway?
MassDOT has a big push for pedestrian bicycle improvements on all of their projects.
Regardless of the roadway?
This is a urban principal arterial, and I mean, their freeways, obviously no, but generally, this isn't like limited access. It's available for all users, so generally MassDOT is encouraging accommodations for all users to get people out of their car, reduce emissions, reduce traffic. So if you can get people to walk instead of taking their car, so that's their big initiatives to get people using different modes.
So all these roads, the button is appropriate?
Yes,
okay.
To provide safe crossing. There's different ways you can you can stop all the traffic, or you can stop. There's different phasing alternatives you might hear later.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
In your long-term solution, if you have that multi-use right away or multi-use path, the bike's is no longer traffic, so they're not following the red light and the green light of traffic. They're a pedestrian.
Yeah.
And so they would actually be following it as if they were a pedestrian and would have to get off their bike, wait for the light, and go.
Right.
Okay.
There are some instances where we also can move towards bicycle signals that will reiterate what's going on for vehicles, so the bicycle can also make that decision to know when to go.
Okay.
But yeah, they'll be off the roadway.
Following up on that, will the bicycles be prohibited from being in the traffic lane?
No.
So they could do either?
Yep.
Okay.
There's no restrictions, bicycles. It's more of a comfortability.
Right.
I was going to mention this further, but we kind of see there's people who are comfortable riding on roads. There's people who are comfortable riding on Route 28 as a road, a higher speed, narrow road. But the majority of users may not be comfortable to ride on the road, and that's kind of where we wanted to propose a multi-use path to attract a broader spectrum of users, because knowing that Falmouth has, an older population / seasonal tourist population, children. So we thought maybe it would attract and benefit more users while providing a dedicated space for all bicycle users. And then these are just some of the benefits with Mara Vista Ave. It'll improve operations to that green circle B, as well as provide bike and ped and improve operations. We're going down a Sandwich Road. As Maureen mentioned, it didn't meet warrants for a traffic signal, so we didn't move that one forward. What we wanted to do was, address the speeds and the sight distance in the Sandwich Road operations. From a short-term perspective, we're looking at potentially eliminating that free right turn movement. It's from Sandwich Road. It's not really a right turn. It's pretty much a straight shot onto 28 today. That's, we wanted to slow them down. As well as you have Trotting Park Road just to the south right there. And the vehicles from Sandwich Road and 28 prove it hard for someone taking a left onto Trotting Road to get that gap in traffic, because you got to deal with both of those entry movements. So we kind of wanted to propose them to bring them in, so they'll slow them down and help Trotting Park Road out as well. And this can be done, as an interim if you want to try it out with striping. It doesn't have to be a big construction project if there's reluctance, but that's what we said. From a short term, you might want to investigate this, as well as just maybe improvements to striping and further enforce that people need to stop and slow down. So here's our long-term solution for Sandwich Road. This is a roundabout. This will address the majority of the deficiencies that we were talking about with speeds, and the unique geometry kind of lends itself to the roundabout. It cleans it up. It will provide a gateway opportunity we see for this part of Falmouth. You can, attract, with signage or landscaping. We're continuing the pedestrian path, our multi-use path, which provides bicyclists, they don't have to enter the roundabout. They can continue off the road. If they want to get on the road, they can follow the crosswalks and ride in the roundabout to make that left turn if they need to get to Sandwich Road. But we found that this will improve operations. Now Sandwich Road will have a little bit easier opportunity to enter Route 28 while minimally disturbing the Route 28 traffic volume. So we found from an operation standpoint, it actually works and it meets the criteria for roundabout, and will address crashes significantly. Roundabouts generally reduce crashes for intersections.
What's the time frame between the two different alternatives? You're talking about doing two different phases here?
Yeah, we looked at something that the town could look at to implement now, or within the next 5 years. These are generally, we looked at 10-year projection traffic volumes. Obviously, this section of road is MassDOT jurisdiction, so it'll take some time to work with the state to implement a long-term geometric solution. Potentially, we're saying 10-year.
Thank you.
How do driveways work on roundabouts?
Driveways?
Well, you have two businesses that come right out onto the roundabout. Is that?
Yeah, you generally don't want to put them in the roundabout. Right. So that's something that will have to be fleshed out. Potentially combining them with if someone's the next parcel, or you generally want to redirect them onto the roadways.
Yeah, let's see how Waitai can do that.
Yeah, that property is problematic. It has a large, wide opening right now, so we, but maybe have the opportunity to connect down to this leg.
And across the street also is another multiple business driveway.
Yep. Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is 7-Eleven. I'm not sure what that's.
Well, actually,
the back
that
entrance.
7-Eleven is a little further north.
Yeah, that's that doctor.
Dr. Lee.
Well, that's a doctor's office, but then right next to it is the 7-Eleven. Then the next one you pointed to is a bedding store.
Yeah, that's actually down here by Trotting Park, Sleepy's. Right.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what that is, but I think it's low volume, so we might be able to close it. So now we're moving on to Jones Road Stop and Shop lights. As Maureen mentioned, the short-term solution is being under construction right now. It's actually, it's considered a long-term improvement. It has geometric improvements. It's with MassDOT. However, there are some things that maybe on the long term, when you implement any of these other alternatives we're talking about, that you would want to do at this intersection, such as that multi-use bike path. You want a continuous facility. One of the things, if that multi-use path doesn't move forward, this intersection will have bike lanes at this just on Route 28. So one thing if the town doesn't go with the multi-use path, you could do is install that green up in the top corner. It's a bike box. This is kind of a newer technique, and it's done a lot more in the city, but it puts when someone wants to make a left turn on 28 and they're in the bike lane, allows them to kind of cut in line of traffic, and it gives them a space in front of all the vehicles at the stop bar, and they sit to wait for their left turn. It gives them the visibility for their opposing traffic to see them instead of being behind a car. And it gives them the opportunity to make that left turn safely and without delay. So, as well as there's some other things you can want to look at, just signal timings with the pedestrians and the vehicles in the future. And potential, you'll see we're proposing a signal, I'll get to it, I guess, at Dillingham. So we would recommend that Dillingham and the stop and shop lights be coordinated so that traffic moves in sync together. So I spoiled Dillingham a little bit, but we looked at this intersection. It's unsignalized. We looked at, can you just put in lanes? That doesn't solve operations problems. It doesn't, that costs a lot of money to start moving curb line anyways. So we looked at really the traffic signal as a viable alternative. It met the warrants. It improves the operations, improves safety. We looked at several different alternatives. In our traffic world, we played with, what to do with the pedestrians, what to do with the left turns. Can left turns only go on an arrow? Can they go on a green ball? And then what to do with Dillingham and Spring Bars. Do they go together or do they go separately? And then we decided, got to look at a roundabout, but it doesn't really fit at this location. It's pretty tight. You got the gas stations, so that did not move forward. From a short term, what we recommend is kind of clean up the intersection, make it tighter, make it a little bit more understandable. There's that awkward center median on Dillingham. It's kind of confusing. So there's just a couple things maybe you could clean up from the minor approaches at this intersection. The long term is the signal. As you can see, we're proposing a traffic signal and also widening Route 28 to install left turn lanes to both minor roads. Generally, the two roads, minor roads, Spring Bar and Dillingham, kind of stay the same cross-section. There is available right-of-way, though, on Dillingham that would, in the future, would complement a bike lane. As we mentioned, we like to see some of the bikes on some of the more lower volume parallel routes to 28, such as Dillingham. So there is a potential to fit that within this design.
Was it looked into making Spring Bars Road one-way?
We did not look into Spring Bars one way.
But if you can only get onto it and not come out of it, would that eliminate at least part of the traffic that's trying to get onto 28?
Yep,
Again,
that's a...
You're sending the traffic someplace else. I mean, they're going to have to go someplace.
Yeah, they're going to have to probably head back up to CVS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we didn't, but could be a potential alternative. It could, I think, the volumes we saw and the crashes we saw were people trying to get across 28, though. Not necessarily just, but if you make it Spring Bars Way one away from Route 28, you might be eliminating some of the conflict points. Yeah. And these are just some of the benefits. It's providing improved operations and safeties, as well as ped and bike improvements, because the multi-use path will go through this intersection. Now we're down to Falmouth Heights. This did meet a warrant for traffic signal. However, we consider that a fatal flaw. The majority of the volume from the minor road on Falmouth Heights Road is right turns, and that doesn't really complement the need for a signal. So we didn't see the need. We didn't place a high priority for traffic signal in this location. There are the geometric, or the unique skew to the intersections, that kind of what we more focused on, as well as traffic calming and pedestrians. From a short-term perspective, we recommend maybe looking into providing a formalized left turn lane onto Falmouth Heights Road. It's wide open now. It kind of operates like that. People kind of move off. There's room for someone to sit and make a left turn. We suggest formalizing that so people can understand the intersection a little better. There's that little center median that can just be removed. And one of the other things was to kind of move the pedestrian crossing on Falmouth Heights Road. It's almost to the south of that aerial picture, and we noticed pedestrians aren't following that. They're cutting right through. So we recommend moving that back up, although that will require installation of the wheelchair ramps, but we see that as an important need to address. Here's another roundabout is what we're proposing for this location. Similar to Sandwich Road, the curvature of the roadway lends itself to actually to make this a viable alternative. The operations here, when we throw in the roundabout, works great. It works on LOSA, so everybody's moving. Route 28 is still moving great, but it gives the opportunity for those Falmouth Heights Road people to get a chance to get out in traffic. Another gateway opportunity, this is a change in the roadway where you're kind of going from the commercial corridor to the downtown corridor, so it'll be a nice opportunity to enhance that. And then as well as it'll slow speeds down, and this is kind of like where you're starting to see a lot of pedestrian volume. You got the malls, you got the seasonal Falmouth Heights neighborhood. So this will provide improved pedestrian crossings with the roundabout. It actually also provides a little bit of access management. If you notice the Starbucks drive-through entrance, just so happened we put that little median buffer that roundabouts tend to have. So now it will eliminate left turns taking a left into the Starbucks drive-through. But in the end, it doesn't really cause a big concern because they can just simply use the roundabout to reverse their direction to make a right turn into the drive-through lane. So it provides an opportunity to further reduce conflict points and provide access management with some of those commercial drives. Moving down to Gifford by the fire station, this met signal warrants. It wants a signal, but it's a unique intersection, and it's starting right in the downtown area. The right-of-way is starting, it's still the general 50-foot right-of-way, but the problem is those storefronts are starting to become closer. So you don't have much wiggle room. And what we saw was there's a potential negative impact when installing a signal here that could lead into traffic backing up into the downtown area and blocking confusing pedestrians, impeding the pedestrian volumes and flow, as well as on-street parking. So we recommended not to move forward with traffic signal, as well as there's the fire station to deal with, the oil change driveway, and King Street also complicates that. So that's why the signal really doesn't operate well when we threw it into our program. So we did not recommend that this would be a good solution. As well as a roundabout just doesn't fit. From a short-term perspective, it really just needs to clean up a lot of the vegetation. Sight distance is a problem on Gifford, trying to make that left turn. There's a lot of overgrown bushes, and I think on King Street as well. So we recommend some vegetation trimming. And also, there might be the right-of-way, because there's a little bit of on-street parking by Peking Palace, but right in front of, I forget what that little business is, but there's no on-street parking as you approach Gifford, but there might be room to add a right turn, stripe a light right turn lane. From a long-term perspective, we're recommending to really enhance the pedestrian environment here because of, you're starting to enter the downtown corridor, and we want to recommend bump outs and the neck down and to provide shorter crossings for pedestrians. By putting those bump outs on Gifford Street, it moves the stop bar further, so now people can see a little bit better, and lets them get their gapping traffic.
But to do that and the right-hand turn lane is going to be hard.
Yes. Yes. We're moving on to Palmer Ave. This is Queens Byway. The traffic signal was not warranted. It operates fairly well either as well, so there's no need to install a traffic signal. And we also looked at installing bicycle lanes in this area, but this is one of the other areas where the right-of-way is limited because there's actually buildings that are constraining any available possible taking. Similar to other unsignalized intersections, we're proposing more of a traffic calming, a neck-down road diet, getting rid of those sweeping right turns, and shortening the pedestrian crossing so vehicles are more formalized. So again, this is that neck-down. That can be done, as a first step with striping, or hatched striping, or you could do more of a formalized with a curb cut and landscaping. One of the big things that we'll get into too is this is an intersection that really could use enhancement with the wayfinding to help direct people to find out which way to go. But knowing that there already is a lot of signage out there, because you got the steamship, you got the Shining Sea Bikeway, there's a lot of signage already out there, so it needs to be looked at and cleaned up and prioritized. From a long-term perspective, we zoomed out. Now we're including Palmer Ave and Catherine Lee Bates. As you can see, we are proposing left turn lanes southbound on your way to Woods Hole for both of those roads, because those are the roads we want to attract people to turn on. Mainly, we need to start tracking people onto Catherine Lee Bates, because that's where the off-street parking is. So we want to formalize that and improve that experience. We also are proposing sidewalks on Palmer Avenue. They're missing right now along Queens Byway. We're also proposing crosswalks that are missing between the parking lot across from Queens Byway, as well as you can see, we proposed this median on Palmer Avenue. This lends to provide a pedestrian refuge area for people, shorten their crossing, as well as there's that traffic light, this old historical little traffic light in there. It gives an opportunity to actually protect it and formalize that area by providing a median, because right now it's kind of just sitting there. So this is the long-term improvement. There also is the opportunity on Catherine Lee Bates in the northbound direction. You could also put in, right now we just hatched yellow area, but you could probably put the northbound left turn lane because that's where the buses are going. There's a lot of large Peter Pan and...
Where's the connection for the bike path? Isn't there a bike path crossing right there?
Exactly.
It's a Catherine Lee Bates.
Yeah, there's that Catherine Lee Bates.
Is it shown here? Is the traffic the bike traffic being driven down Catherine Lee Bates?
It is today.
How about on this plan?
It will continue to.
Sam, you had something?
Yeah, and it was exactly that point. It actually follows the road that the buses follow up to the depot.
Well, they've
And it
added
seems
a
to
new
me
lane,
that warrants a crosswalk right there, because
Yeah.
the people are going out there to get to the bike path. And,
Yep.
so striping should be provided, a crosswalk there for
No, that's a good
bicyclists and
point.
pedestrians.
That's a good point. We could definitely add the definitely a crosswalk and appropriate signage to alert people, or we can further enhance it too.
Well, I think a path has been built to take it from the bike path, so separate from the bus track. There's a new path there, and it just ends right there, and I don't see it shown in this plan.
Yep.
It should continue on to Catherine Lee Bates.
Sure. The project kind of focused more on 28 improvements, but that we can definitely show that, we'll definitely show the crosswalk, because that's an important, definitely connection between those two. So we can show that.
You had mentioned before, though, that your intention was to get the bikes off Palmer Avenue at this point
Yep.
and focus them on Catherine Lee Bates. I think there's the opportunity to do it right there.
Yep. Those are some of the points I talked about. We're getting rid of a lot of the wide geometry at Palmer Ave and adding those southbound lefts with pedestrian refuges. So now we're moving up to the hospital, and as Maureen started to allude to with the conversation, the big thing we looked at here was the fluctuation in traffic and the variability times a day. Our analysis, we kind of looked at, look at our peak 1 hours, the AM, PM. knowing that there's a Sunday at 5 o'clock problem when the big, the biggest ferry comes in with all the people leaving for the weekend. We're aware of that, and what we're trying to address with our solution is to address that. We looked at adding additional travel lanes on this, because right now, the two minor roads, it's kind of conflicting when you're trying to make a left from the hospital onto 28, and it's hard to tell people from Jones Road. It's a shared through left, so you don't know when to go. It's hard to make that left because you have that heavy right turn volume as well. So we were looking at maybe could we add more lanes on Jones Road as well as on Palmer Avenue. But the right-of-way here is pretty built out when this intersection was upgraded. You already have Cape Cod Bagel and the thrift store kind of occupying a lot of that. So we couldn't really find the opportunity to add lanes. So we looked at.
Could be changed so that the people coming from the hospital that want to go.
Nancy, would you like to be recognized?
Yes, sir.
Would you like, why don't you let her finish and then we'll let you talk, okay?
Yes, sir.
So from a short-term perspective, you can definitely change the traffic timings, optimize it, to change it. I'm not sure when the last time they were even updated, so it's definitely an opportunity to do that. In 2015, which I know we're almost through now, MassDOT's supposed to install these flashing yellow arrows. It's a new traffic light system that they're using for permissive left turns. So that's coming, and will be soon. It's supposed to be a little bit more of a safer and an intuitive traffic light. Some other things we recommend are restriping the intersection. The crosswalks are pretty faded. They're that stamped concrete, so not as visible. That it looks like a brick, red brick. We recognize maybe it should be further enhanced, as well as improving the pedestrian signal heads. And at the bike path crossing, there's a lot of issues as well sometimes. So you just recently installed that rapid rectangular flashing beacon on Palmer Ave at the Shining Seas crossing, that heavy crossing. This might also be a location to install one of those to further alert motorists to that heavy crossing for the bike path. So from a long-term perspective, we're recommending an alternative called adaptive traffic signal control. It's a new technology. What it does, it takes real-time traffic operations. It's 24/7, 365 days a year. It's reading what's going on with the traffic, the volumes, queuing, and it's adjusting the traffic signal timings dynamically all throughout the day, through the weekend, through June versus December. It will monitor and adapt. It's beneficial in these areas where you have high variability, such as the hospital and when the steamship lets out. And then also with the whole variability of going from summer to off-peak. So we think this is a great alternative and a great intersection that this should be implemented to potentially alleviate a lot of those backups we see. And we saw the ones in the morning too, the southbound traffic heading to Woods Hole. So this will allow the signal to understand, okay, this is the heaviest movement, we got to keep this one processing more so.
Going back to the flashing yellow left turn arrow,
Yep.
That's one of my concerns with that intersection is if you are making a left-hand turn up to the hospital, you virtually break the law every time because you're sitting in the middle of the intersection, the light turns red, and then you go because you can't see behind the trucks going to make a left onto Jones, and it's running a gauntlet with people zipping right through that intersection, and you're trying to make a left-hand turn. And I've always wondered why it isn't simply a short left-hand green arrow there so that people making a left there could just make a left onto, and the other traffic would be stopped for a couple seconds, 30 seconds or something. And the other thing that I see is people going across the bike path and people coming around making that right-hand turn and whipping right up there and slamming on the brakes, and you got somebody else behind them. Is there any way of coordinating the lights at the intersection with maybe some lights or signals at the bike path? Because bikers tend to my observation is very few people dismount and walk their bikes. I've seen people zip right through there without even stopping. I'm crossing by the bike paths all the time, and I crawl through them because I can't tell you how many times I've almost been broadsided by bicyclists. So I really think something needs to be done there too, because people come down that hill also at a pretty good clip, and someone pops out right in front of them. So there needs to be some coordination with a signal there for bicyclists as well as the motorists.
Yeah, that's something that couldn't be looked at. The only thing is it adds potential to back up traffic into the intersection, so that has to be closely looked at. And there's obviously the issue of people even using it. From a bicycle standpoint, they would have to push a button to activate it. But I agree that there needs to be a little bit more enhancement for that crossing, and there's definitely some things that can be looked at.
And you mentioned that the bicycle boxes are painted green.
Yes.
Would that also be a color to use for bicycle crossings, main roads? Because I know it's not in your study area, but there's one further up Palmer Ave where the bike path comes out to Goodwill Park.
Yes.
And we've talked about a crosswalk there. Is green the color for bike crossings?
Green's generally the now understood the color for bike. You'll see that in, I feel like Cambridge and Oregon, where a lot of people are more pro-bike. You're starting to. Oh yeah, blue is another one, but.
Yeah, blue.
But yeah, that's definitely something that could be treated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Those are good comments. This is our last intersection. So we're down at Jones and Gifford at the Coonamessett. And so
Nancy had a question.
Well, I'll let her finish and then I'll ask.
It's an existing signal. It has pretty much one lane in each direction. It's experiencing the delay. So we looked at, can we change the timings? There's not much you can do with it today. It just runs on 2 phases. It runs for north-south and east-west. So there's not much flexibility with what's going on today. And you just have the single lanes. So we also tried to put in a roundabout as well here, but you're also dealing with some right-of-way issues because the volumes here are heavy. You have a lot of right turns in all directions. You have a lot of left turns in all directions. So trying to accommodate that within the roundabout was proving a little bit difficult. So we recommend that it remain a signal. Again, this is kind of the theme, update the signal with some safety improvements. In the interim, bicycle detection, pedestrian lights. From a long-term perspective, this is what we're proposing, some geometric improvements on all 4 approaches to include a left turn lane. So we'll give a formalized space for left turn users and allow vehicles, through vehicles to continue on. It will also have a dedicated phase for those left turns to go together. This provides improved traffic operations, addresses some safety, and we also are improving the pedestrian environment.
Will you wait just a minute? Let's see if we have any questions from the audience, and then we'll wrap up. Nancy, would you like to ask a question?
Is it possible to have that hospital light intersection back up there, or shall I just talk on the intersection? I use that intersection. Coming into town, you have, for the person coming south on 28, when you want to go east on Jones Road, nearly all the time, the green left turn arrow will work. It doesn't always work for some reason. Then you can go left on your green arrow. When you want to come back and you want to come west on Jones Road and you want to go north on 28 and the traffic is coming east on Terhune and getting down there, one problem that you have is that the people in the left-hand lane on Terhune who want to go north, they can be very aggressive making their turn. So when you're coming west on Jones Road, you get a right turn arrow, but there's some incorrect timing. Those people coming to make the left turn to go north need some kind of a better signal, because they come out of there like they're coming out of a cage, and you're trying to make your correct turn, and there's some wrong timing for the person going to the west to make the going north, and the person coming from a hospital there. I really think that if you had an arrow for those people coming from the hospital that want to go north on Palmer, they need to have some arrow that lets them go.
Go ahead, can you answer, do you have any plans for that? Isn't that a right turn, or in red, she's talking about coming on Jones Road, can't you just take a right turn there anytime?
Yeah, it also has we call it an overlap. So when that southbound left turn, it has a protected green arrow. There's also a protected right arrow for those, so because they're all going without conflict. So that's what's happening. You did a really good job at describing that problem, and we know what you're talking about. We looked at providing. The problem is Jones Road eastbound doesn't have a left turn lane opposing, so we tried to look at installing that left turn lane, but the problem is you need that dedicated right turn lane because that volume is just so heavy. Otherwise, the operations are just going to get way worse than they are today. So we looked at adding a third lane on Jones Road, but it doesn't fit. Technically, it doesn't fit, but because we tried to minimize right-of-way impacts because that's costly, but that doesn't mean it maybe could be investigated. But I think maybe from a minimum, there maybe could be an additional phase for that hospital left, knowing though that that's going to add delay to this intersection that's already experiencing delay. So it's trying to balance all of that, and knowing that Route 28 is such a heavy movement and only has one lane in each direction. So that's what we're trying to manage as well. It's a balancing act here.
Did I hear you say that this traffic signal actually has some kind of like artificial intelligence, and it's optimizing, it's sensing the traffic and optimizing and changing the timings to keep it flowing?
Yep, that's exactly.
So that, you've already got the programming there, so maybe you can just tune it up a little bit.
It's not there today.
That's future?
This is something we're recommending.
Okay, that's what you're
Brand new
recommending.
technology that's kind of new to the
I
area.
got you. So that could address the issue there as well.
Potentially, yes.
Yes, Paul?
I think you've done a terrific job on looking at all the options at the 9 intersections, both short and long term. But my question is, what is the process? 8 of these intersections are the state highway. What's the process on dealing with the state DOT on these kinds of improvements?
Yeah, I think all but one isn't, or two, sorry, Jones Road at Gifford, Coonmess it's not, and Gifford is not, but the rest are MassDOT. If you want to count two as well, but there's going to be, similar to probably what you did up here with Stop and Shop and at Davisville Road, it's going to be a similar process to get those initiated if you elaborate.
Yeah, so the point we're at is developing our master plan for transportation for Falmouth, which we'll turn over to the town, and then we'll assist in any way we can to help you coordinate with DOT, but that would be the next step, is to get in front of DOT and figure out how you can get some of these improvements implemented on the state highway. And we work on Mass DOT projects all the time, so what we proposed here in terms of our designs are right in line. As Colleen mentioned, they're very adamant about providing ped and bike facilities. We designed in that fashion as if it were a MassDOT project. So I would think that these improvements could flow through the MassDOT process.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paul, one more?
I'd just like one more. There's a lot of details, particularly all the curb cuts along Route 28. but I'd like to see some information about the truck deliveries to the restaurants and businesses in Falmouth Village.
Okay. If you can bear just 5 more minutes, we had a couple slides on parking and wayfinding, so if you don't mind, I'll go through those at this point. And one of the things when we talk about a parking plan is considering the loading zones on downtown Main Street. So what we see is when we look at your downtown, there's a lot of good features. I mean, you have buildings at the back of the sidewalk. You don't require those developments to provide parking. That's all really good for a vibrant downtown area. But I'm going to start saying some of the things you may not want to hear. We do recommend that the town come up with a parking management plan. And I am going to make recommendations about paying for parking. And also to consistently incorporate bicycle parking. So if we can walk through a little bit of this. A parking management plan really needs to be comprehensive. It needs to be simple. People need to come into your downtown and know right away where they can park and what it's going to cost them to park, and where the best location is based upon their destination. So again, as we look at the plan that I showed earlier, you can see what we want to do is all the yellow parking, which is your most desirable on-street parking, we want to come up with initiatives to make that the high turnover parking. The parallel roads that are shown in orange and purple, we want that to be the longer term on-street parking. And then the longest term is in your off-site, off-street parking locations. So when we're looking at the Main Street parking on the street, what's the best way to get that to turn over? Well, you can approach it in one of 2 ways. You can either do time regulation or you can price it. So if you choose to go with time options, you're going to take on the burden of regulating that. You know, and there's a little bit of revenue for parking tickets, but not a lot. So it almost becomes a financial burden to the town to have to regulate time-restricted parking. Another thing that does is it sends a message to your visitors to be here for, 1 hour, be here for 2 hours. Versus if you get into pricing, there's a lot of options available. And as you're all aware, I'm sure you've seen some of the innovative parking meters that are out there. The days of having a meter at every spot are gone. And the days of looking through your purse trying to find that last quarter so you can go into the store are gone. Now really what you're seeing is you're seeing these pay stations. And everyone's using their credit card. And there's a couple of different ways you can program these. It's pretty sophisticated technology. Some of the things we would recommend in Falmouth is to consider seasonal parking pricing. Maybe in your off-season you can eliminate the parking strategy, but during the summer months when everyone's down there and it's really competitive to park and you want a lot of turnover, then you have a parking fee in the summer. You can also have different parking fees based on residents versus non-residents. And then you can structure it based upon how long you're there. So, say the first hour is less, but the longer you stay in that spot, the more you pay for each hour that you're there. And again, that's gonna direct people to say, oh, I want to be here for a couple hours. I'm going to have dinner. I'm going to hang out after. I'm going to park in the long-term parking. Or I'm going to run into this one store. I'm going to just throw some money in the meter and park short-term. When we get to the secondary streets, all those parallel streets and the side streets, again, we're recommending that you implement a parking strategy on those. And not as expensive as on Main Street, but again, do some type of parking strategy. When you're in Falmouth in the summer and you watch the people parking on Main Street, they actually get out of their cars and look for a place to pay to park. And then they realize they don't have to pay to park. So, you're all used to having free parking, but it's at a cost to what you're doing with your downtown. So from a professional point of view, I know no one likes to hear it, but we have to put that out there that we would recommend that. And then again, in your off-street parking, we would again recommend bicycle parking be incorporated, and that you encourage all your shops and restaurants down on Main Street to get their employees to park in these off-street long-term parking locations and give up those front row spots to the people that you want coming and going throughout the day. Yes, right, and with the pricing too, as I was saying, if you just do time regulation, you're not generating a lot of revenue. Here, you're generating revenue. You have the opportunity to dedicate that revenue right back to the downtown. If you want to use it for streetscape amenities or other features, it's, you don't mind paying to park so much when it's going right back to your downtown. Another feature that we think is important relative to the parking is the wayfinding and the pedestrian connections. So last time we were here, we touched on wayfinding a little bit. We talked about the fact that you're either given information or direction, or you're identifying something. So what we're recommending is wayfinding throughout the corridor. We've identified key locations to wayfind to. What we're seeing out here right now is a variety of wayfinding on way too many destinations. So, if we pick like the top 7 destinations, wayfind to those. We would recommend that there almost be just the whole project just on wayfinding, because you really need to develop a theme, and it's an artistic approach. You can see like up in the far right corner, everyone recognizes the signs in Newport. You see them over and over. You come to look for them, and they guide you right to where you need to get to. As opposed to what we're seeing where we're getting a lot of options written on very small printed signs that you just can't comprehend and make a quick decision as you're driving by with 2.5 seconds to make your decision. So on this map, what we're showing is in the downtown area, these yellow circles show where we have key decision points, and that's where we would expect to see the wayfinding signage. So, again, as Colleen talked about, trying to get the bikes on the parallel route instead of coming onto Main Street, trying to get people to realize that they can get to parking off of Main Street on Catherine Lee Bates Road. So those are some of the key points that we would want to use to do our wayfinding. And again, if we look at the whole corridor, we've identified some key decision points in terms of wayfinding. So that those will be part of our recommendations in our transportation master plan. And so, as I mentioned, when we came to you last time, we were between tasks 1 and 2. At this point, we're almost to the wrap-up point. We certainly welcome all your comments. We'll consider anything that you suggest that we haven't looked at already. So at this point, I just open it up to questions. And again, I thank you for your time at this meeting. I know you have a really full night, so I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you.
So I was kind of expecting that you would show like a dedicated connection of the bike path to cutting across town, down maybe Catherine Lee Bates, and maybe to Spring Bars to Mara Vista, something like that.
So what we see in terms of the bike connection, so the bike path comes across, as you mentioned before, right to Catherine Lee Bates Road, which is where we would want to direct the bikes to instead of Main Street, right? And then bring them back to Route 28. And when we do bring them back to Route 28, through the rest of the corridor, we're proposing a multi-use path on one side of the road. So there is a route all the way along for the bicyclists. And as Colleen said, we struggle with putting them on the road and off the road and dealing with the limited right-of-way. And collectively, we felt like that was the best solution.
So in the end, will there be mapping and you'll have your bikeway laid out?
Yeah, we can include a graphic that shows all the bike facilities from top to bottom along the corridor. Yeah, that's
Okay.
a good recommendation. We'll do that.
Thank you.
Jim, somebody
in the audience.
Considering everybody knows how difficult parking is, and we only have a finite land that we're currently dealing with, did you consider a parking garage as an option?
We didn't. Our focus was really on Route 28. Obviously to look at parking, we had to look off of Route 28, but we felt like that was a liberty a little bit outside of our scope of Route 28.
And if there's no more,
Yes,
this guy in the black was waiting longer.
I didn't see him. Go ahead. You have to come up to the mic, please.
Sorry, my first name.
Guy in the fourth row there. Not third row.
I live on Palmer Avenue between the Queens Byway and the Green, and I know that there's a sidewalk proposed for that stretch of Palmer Avenue. I think I and the people who live near me are concerned that that's going to create sort of a trap for pedestrians coming into town that will lure them to that nice new sidewalk on that side of the road and then drop them at the Green, where they will then try to cross Palmer Avenue at the sort of the most dangerous spot, right where it curves one way and then curves the other, and traffic is coming through there at a fairly high rate of speed, and there's limited visibility and no current crosswalk or anything. And so I was wondering if there was any, if you guys have put any thought into what to do sort of with people walking into town on that side of it.
So collectively, we did short and long-term improvements. So when we're talking about the multi-use path, the proposed sidewalks, that's all in the long-term improvement. When we talked about Palmer, we talked about tightening up that intersection so the crossings are shorter and safer. So that would collectively be done together.
But I think that wouldn't address what happens when people, yeah, we could.
I think that's a good comment though, and that will need to be addressed with the whole corridor improvement, about how to connect the two. There is there'll have to just be a better probably crossing system because there is no sidewalks on the green, or we could look into enhancing the green with sidewalks and stuff, because right now it's just all green space, but that's something we can make sure that is included with our graphics.
One more, yes, go ahead.
Good evening, my name is Michael Feingold and I live at 88 Palmer. If you put up that other picture, we could see exactly where I live. I've met with several of the neighbors along with Mr. McConerty. This is my driveway right here. The point that Jim was trying to make was if you have the sidewalk go on this side of the road, when you get to Dr. Price's, that's a pretty sharp curve. People from out of town do not know that area and will try to cross right there because they'll see that everything else is happening across the street. If you stand there, you will never want to cross there. I mean, that's been the site of several accidents. That's a dangerous curve to begin with. My view is that we shouldn't put a sidewalk on this side. I do think the narrowing of the corridor along with the island is a great idea. I am also pro-bicycle. I'm glad to see that we're tackling that issue. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mary Pat?
As we are discussing this section now, it occurs to me that we really didn't talk about the next intersection down, known as Fulton's Corner. Isn't it?
Watson's
Famous curve.
Watson's Corner. The one, if you go one street down, where 28 curves to the right, that's what you weren't talking about that. That, you can't, and theoretically, you're not supposed to take a left turn there.
Oh.
Now we're talking about the other side.
No, I'm talking about when you come down.
Where Locust Street starts and Main Road, yeah.
Bates and you pass Palmer Avenue.
I don't think that was in the study.
Yeah, we
It
didn't
was
go
not
that
in the
Oh, you didn't
scope.
go that far.
No, sorry.
It's just outside the scope.
That's right, Watson's Corner. No, oh, okay, I just wondered about that, because that's really a no left
Yes.
turn.
Yep.
And it's sort of a quiet kind of street. I mean, nobody really uses it unless they're coming from Woods Hole and
south,
taking a
yeah.
right into town. But you don't see people going south and taking a left there.
No.
There's a sign.
I
Says-
just wondered.
it says no
why
left turn.
We never really,
From
well, I
Main
know it
Street.
does, but we never
Oh.
really just even discussed it.
Because it's not in the
I thought it was
scope.
worth being mentioned,
It's just outside the study.
outside the
It's
scope.
outside the scope of their work
Okay, thank you.
by a block. Okay. Good, Brian, close it up.
So we'll get together, we'll wrap it up and get your final.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very nicely done.
Keep in mind, folks, this was a private entity doing a study. This isn't the state doing it, okay? They're outside consultants brought in to give this report to us. Thank you very much. Okay. Next on our agenda is the transportation element of the local comprehensive plan, getting ready for town meeting. And Patricia, you're ready.
We've had this reviewed by the planning board. First, the comprehensive plan committee put it together. It's gone back and forth with the planning board a couple of times, and so what we're looking for right now is the selectmen's input on it, because as you know, you'll recommend it for town meeting. So please take a good, careful look at it and see whether you agree with that or not, or if you have any questions on it.
My question is on the goal. Freedom and choice are wonderful words. I'm not sure if I understand exactly what they mean in this context.
Because we don't exactly either. We're looking into the future, and that's why we chose those words.
So it says Falmouth will increase transportation to freedom and choice.
Right, that means whenever
modes.
the opportunity exists to expand the rights of way. We know right now we've only got so much with the bicycle path, so we can't do other things to the side of it, any other kinds of transportation. We know that we're probably going to have driverless cars in the future. We have no clue what might be 50 years from now, because those driverless cars are coming on us pretty fast with the research that's being done and the trials that have already taken place on those. So we cannot know, but what it means is to, insofar as possible, do not give any rights of way away and increase the rights of way whenever possible, so that we have ultimate freedom of choice as to what might be 50 to 100 years from now. Think about 28 currently right now with the varying widths along the way and what we were just hearing here. Well, we might have to take some land to have better opportunities for use of our current modes of transportation, our vehicles and our bicycles and our feet, to be safe. So that's why, as you would know, as you remember, in a goal, we try to be as absolutely broad as we can. If you can think of other words than that, fine. Yeah, Sue.
I am scared of this because it seems to suggest, I mean, just if you look at increased transportation, I think that in our effort to be open and flexible, you know, we're really not stepping back far enough. I think maybe we want to look at something which, you know, will focus on limiting traffic so that we encourage, in other words, traffic from automobiles, which will control emissions, which will address climate change. Encourage alternative modes of transportation other than automobiles. I think when, you know, as we start the discussion and suggesting increasing rights of way in land takings, all I'm seeing is a flood of driverless cars coming at me. And I think what we want to, you know, we certainly want to anticipate realities, but I think we want to discourage, you know, in order to keep the character of the town, you know, I think we have to do what, you know, some parts of this traffic plan suggested, where, you know, where we, you know, incorporate bike lanes and a little bit of green space. I'm not so big on the neon lights, the rotaries, but I think that maybe we want to look at, and I don't know if, Doug, this is part of what you were suggesting, I think increased transportation, while it certainly is a reality, and I'd be looking more towards something that a way that we manage it correctly, so that we balance the lifestyle that Falmouth in its tourism economy and all of the residents really appreciate.
Yeah, I think that's what the policy seems to be
Bob
doing
has,
that.
Bob has something.
It's the
You'd
goal
like to
that's
bring up?
still
Yeah.
confusing.
See, you're stopping at the word transportation. We're looking at transportation freedom and choice, which the McMahon report did address. We want to give people the choice to ride a bike where they don't have a choice to ride a bike now, a choice to
Public
walk where they
transportation.
don't have a choice to walk, a choice to take public transportation where it isn't available now. Those are the types of things that we're talking about. We're not just talking about everybody widening the roads and being able to drive everywhere they want. We're trying to give people multiple options for how they get somewhere. If you're in East Falmouth and the village changes, we want to create that area so that people can walk to it and bike to it and get there through public transportation. So that's what we're trying to increase, is not just the traffic itself, but
We
the
were
modes.
actually discussing alternate methods of transportation, not widening it for cars. But that's what it was, so we didn't make it the point across, Doug.
What if it said increase multimodal transportation options?
We had that
That
in
was the
there.
intent, and we
Yeah.
carved it out because it was too wordy, but that,
Yeah.
you know,
And it was something else.
Because I understood the
Right,
effort
that's
and
the
the
thought.
goal, but that addresses what my concern is much better, I think.
Mary Pat, yep.
Just going back to what we just heard, I was thinking, if we adopted a parking management plan similar, say, to what was being proposed, what does that do to affect the flow of traffic or the management of traffic or the increase in traffic or the decrease in traffic? Does it help to manage the flow of traffic in town by having a parking management plan? Because right now, it's people just go where they choose to go, hoping that maybe they can find their destination or their parking spot or whatever. But if we actually had a parking management plan like that, as proposed,
Kind of what that expert said, maybe we should ask them that question.
the entire flow of traffic
Well, it would
in town?
also tie
And how
into-
could we manage it?
It would tie into increased public transportation. We've talked about using the schools as hubs in the summer for shuttles and public transportation systems, so that you're pulling people away from other areas so that they wouldn't have to drive as far, which would reduce emissions, and they could take public transportation to get to the beaches or to go downtown to shop or to eat.
Sam, you had a point?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest a quick wording change possibly on that statement we were just talking about, and that Falmouth will increase transportation choices and opportunities. I'm looking for something that gets rid of the word freedom, because that is just like wide open, and I don't know how to interpret it.
That's where I was. We got enough freedom in this country.
I don't know, throwing it out.
Rebecca, you have a point?
I think what happened here immediately, and it kind of went around to everyone, is the wording was incorrect, to understand it immediately. And if you want to think about town meeting, and many people who really may not agree with this Article 4, and they really should. So the wording, however, Sam said it, it has to be worded that town meeting understands it the first time they read it. And transportation freedom and choice is not really saying what you are now explaining what it is. So I think that should be the goal. The first time you read it, you should know what it means.
I think Sam was right on.
Mm-hmm.
Falmouth will increase transportation, choices, and opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think about it right now, we've got a bicycle path, but that took away our rail capacity because we don't have enough space for everything in there. And that was the vision that we were operating on here, that we cannot get rid of our choices. We need at every opportunity to increase our choice capacity. So, when you make your recommendation, here you go, guys.
That sounds...
That's that one. And then, as you know, the policy, are you all agreed with that, the way this is?
Sir, that
Okay.
addresses my concern.
Then,
Opportunities and choice, or choice and opportunity?
choices and opportunities. Then, as you know, the policies feed back onto the goal, and they're still broad, but that guides the action items. So, do you have any problems with any of those?
The tough thing always to remind town meeting, and we'll do that on recommendation, is these are goals. As opposed to saying we hope we're going to do these are goals. We can't even promise we're going to do them, but we are going to.
Well, actually, no, the policies are something different. The goal is this big, broad thing that we're shooting for. But the policies form what the town will measure its actions against.
Can I ask a question? I'm unclear, the second bullet under policies, what that means.
Okay.
What it would look like.
We all know that we have a bicycle path that's desperately in need of repair. Okay. If, once that bicycle path had been built, there was an institutional, I don't know what you'd call it in the budgetary statement, capital improvement, wherever it would go, it would become a line item every year, or it would be buried under a form that happens every year. There would be a certain amount set aside to take care of that bicycle path so that it wouldn't get run down.
It's an attempt to stop deferred maintenance when the town runs out of money, that we just let some of our infrastructure stop until it has to be totally replaced because it gets run down.
But we have that within our, we already have that policy.
Well, this kind of...
Then it doesn't work.
This kind of defines that transportation is important to us and shouldn't be deferred maintenance.
So you do this for every roadway in town? That's all transportation infrastructure? I'm unclear. All sidewalks?
It should be, whether we can do it or not.
Well, this was basically for new projects. When you do something from now on, you're gonna make sure that you don't build something because you get a little pot of money and then you can never maintain it. That's what this is about. Not what we have today, but going forward, your goals and policies are, once you develop something new, you wanna be able to maintain it.
Yes?
I like the concept, but I think I agree with what I perceive as Julian's, questions and concerns. We have a lot of infrastructure already. I mean, this very building right now where we're trying to, maintain and save for the future. There are a lot of things, roadways, beaches, bridges, all of that. And I think that there are always disagreements about priorities when things should be done, but I don't think that, there needs to be, a formal statement in the form of this article where we say when we build something, we want to maintain it. I think that sort of goes without saying, and it is always our goal. And so I guess my concern would be if we put this in for things we build now, when something older needs to be maintained, does that get priority because it's more of a mandate? So I don't think we need that particular part.
You would say cross it out.
That's what I would say.
So we have two policies.
That's what I would say.
Okay. I'm not going to argue that. It's just that we felt that there was such a need that before we do anything further, we really need to have it institutionalized.
I guess the money I know we're putting into the bike path on a regular basis, I'm sorry that the planning board doesn't feel that it's being done. I know it's being looked at. The town has limited resources.
Right.
We can't, unfortunately, we can't maintain everything to the highest level that is possible. And it isn't because we don't have a budget process in place. It isn't because we don't look at these things. It's because we don't have unlimited resources to fund everything. And I'm not sure the process, having this as a part of policy of the transportation element.
Well, a lot of our planning is a little bit blue sky and wishful thinking that we could do all these things. I'm afraid that's what some of these elements, some of this is. So, we hear what you're saying.
Well, I can give an example with the push for a new field at the high school. One of the big issues was how do you maintain that surface? And there really weren't good answers for that. So is that a situation where you say, well, no, we can't tell you that we're going to be able to maintain it? Do we not do it in that case? And that's kind of what this is about. It could be part of the thought process. If we take this on, are we going to be able to maintain this?
I mean, I guess the way I would word it is before instituting a new transportation infrastructure, the future costs are looked into. That's, I'm not sure how to word that, but that's where really I'm going saying, as opposed to what this says is, let's go ahead and do the new transportation ideas, provided we have looked at what the future costs are going to be.
We might be able to handle it.
I think that's just a negative thing, saying, encouraging you not to go forward, and I don't want to have that in the policy.
We already do it.
Okay. Sam?
Can I take another stab at rewording?
Please do.
Maybe see if this resonates. Falmouth will include life cycle maintenance in budgeting for transportation infrastructure.
It's essentially what we were trying to do here.
Say it again.
Okay.
Falmouth will include life cycle maintenance in budgeting for transportation infrastructure. It just says we're going to pay attention to this.
You're talking about new or existing?
They said new. I mean, I assume you would want to actually look at it from the beginning, but I mean, even our old stuff, we got to take a look at it. I mean, we can't say new but not the old.
It's we can try this. I mean, it's an intention to do it. It's. Yes.
What was the end of yours? Falmouth will include life cycle maintenance when?
In budgeting for transportation infrastructure.
Okay.
Jim, since you recognize me, I'm going to still argue for just crossing it out because it's a laudable goal. We, as Doug was saying, we try that with everything. It's already part of what we do. I think the discussion is worth having. It's important to remind ourselves of that. But I don't want to box us in where it's almost like, a state mandate coming where we, you end up losing a little bit of flexibility in terms of your macro management if you try to put some projects above others, whether it's because they're transportation or because they're newer. I think that these sentiments are already part of the process. So I still would argue just to delete that.
Can we change the word include to consider? Falmouth will consider life cycle maintenance and budgeting for transportation infrastructure.
I guess, I think it's something we do.
They're saying they already do it.
Okay, I understand.
Where is it, I just question, where is it written though? This is what we're trying to do, is it nowhere anybody else can see that you do it? Where is it written that you do that? That's all, is it?
Well, I wish Peter McConerty were here because we have a road maintenance plan that takes a look at.
He was here.
Yeah, he was here a few minutes ago. And they do that on a fairly regular basis. They report that to the Board of Selectmen. Tonight we'll have our hearing on our annual capital.
I understand they do it, but we're just trying to understand, so this is the guide for everybody. This board won't be here when this plan's used all the time. That's what I'm just saying. That's what the whole setup of this was, is for the future. So these are the policies that anybody looks at. Anybody that wants to pick this up and read it understands that that's something that you consider. Like we said, consider these items.
Jim,
Yes.
Heather.
Oh, I don't want
okay.
to
No.
disparage more, just discussion. I look at this as something that might be better suited in an overarching statement relative to the entire local comprehensive plan. It really doesn't relate specifically to traffic infrastructure, any of the infrastructure plans that you're looking at. That's an appropriate
We can put it in the preamble.
What we often see is community interest and demand for service and needs and desires generally take front stage from the planned life cycle.
Where would be appropriate to put an item that in assessing any plan that comes before either the planning board or the planning department, the effect on transportation is looked at? Is that appropriate within the transportation element of local comprehensive plan? And I'm sure that's something you guys do also, that you don't approve a big plan that comes to you without considering the effect it's going to have on transportation.
There are two places that we have talked about as the smaller committee. One is the overall introduction to this whole comprehensive plan, that because life cycle maintenance is in many parts that it applies to, but we can specifically put it into the narrative that goes with the transportation portion of it. That is something that should be considered.
And I think this goes a little to what Sue's point is, that not only do we want to increase transportation choices and opportunities, our transportation element of local comprehensive plan should be, and how can we control transportation in a way that keeps Falmouth vibrant, moving, lively. And one is to increase the choices, but also is to look at how we're developing and the densities. Are we putting a 500 apartments site on the biggest street in town? If we had that as a local comprehensive plan, that we don't do things like that. Actually, I think the Cape Cod Commission might have had some answers, when they were dealing with Marriott, saying that's part of our comprehensive plan, to always look at the effect of traffic.
Yes, Mary Pat?
Well, I would think something like this might belong in the strategic plan for the town, when we're talking about the economic sustainability of the town. That part of that includes maintaining our infrastructure, all of our infrastructure, whether it's buildings, roads, sidewalks, whatever it may be. That concept of maintaining it and having a process for doing that, or how did you, institutionalizing the process, that be part of our strategic plan, that as we, that's a basic concept of the plan, that as we create infrastructure or change it or build it or whatever, that we're always conscious of how we're going to continue to have a process for maintaining it for its life, the life cycle, as you call it.
That's
Rather
what we're
than making
talking
it
about.
specific to any
So,
particular.
yeah, you're saying it belongs in all the elements.
I think
Yeah, and we
it's
agree.
a very broad statement.
We agree. It kind of ended up here to our discussions, but it belongs everywhere.
Was Peter part of our discussion on
He
this
was.
whole- And I believe that was one of his.
Right, and it
his
came from
suggestions from
him, but
Peter.
we just spelled it out in transportation, but you're saying it belongs everywhere.
And just to make it full circle, that's exactly what we did. We put the traffic concerns into our 5-year strategic plan. So this would sort of make a set piece.
Okay.
I'm not objecting.
No, I agree.
I would prefer to have our joint discussion before anything goes on a warrant, though, so it doesn't come in with a massive rewriting, as we're going to be doing with this one. So you all will be doing the rewriting on it and doing it as amended.
What are we rewriting?
Well, first of all, you're rewriting the goal.
Oh, the goal.
So that it reads, Falmouth will increase transportation choices and opportunities. And secondly, you're going to be crossing out the second bullet point, so that there are only 2 policies at this
We'll
point.
be discussing that in our recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of this is we haven't met enough, it's been delayed and delayed, and now we're up against the deadline to meet it, and that's what's caused this. That's right, this should have happened 2 months ago. And that's, we have not had this opportunity to talk with you.
Because it kind of looks embarrassing in my estimation, it looks embarrassing in front of town meeting to have to come in with something of this nature when you're talking about the comprehensive plan for the future of Falmouth.
Can we come in with a joint recommended?
But this is already on the warrant.
It's already, okay, so
So
I
that's the
see.
reason we're stuck in this position.
It's a timing issue.
Timing,
We
got
should
it.
have met 2 months ago, that's the problem. But we can solve it, I don't think we have a disagreement on it, I think we're all
No,
set.
this is fine.
Now,
Right.
there's somebody in the audience that had a comment? Actually, I was recognizing somebody else, but you can go ahead. You're all set? Okay.
Mark Finneran, I might be missing the whole point completely, but I mean, there are issues in the town where we don't maintain things properly, and I think maybe people don't want to hear it, but just like a kid doesn't want to hear, if you want a puppy dog, you got to feed it, and you got to walk it, and such, and I think it's a very good and valid point.
No, I think we all think that we're going to integrate it in everything and not have to be specific to this, and I think we'll cover it. So I guess you're going to have to make the final changes and bring it forward.
So we're all in agreement then, we just eliminate 2?
We're eliminating it, yep. Okay. We're moving right along. We'd like to talk about updating some of the thought process and planning that the planning board wants to keep on the agenda until we actually bring warrant articles forward. Right now, these next 2 issues. It's not for a big discussion tonight, but we just wanted to lay it out as an update to inform you and get input that we plan on bringing forward for not this town meeting, but hopefully the next one, some solutions that have come up from the different meetings we've had, and it's creation of a multifamily zone and an accessory apartment bylaw. We have some greater density areas, they're not quite multifamily, that aren't really providing us the housing we need. And we have an accessory bylaw that's been in the books for a long time, and it's been a failure. It really hasn't produced anything. So we want to bring that forward for discussion with you folks. We'd like to talk about it more, and we'd like to look at the reasons why it hasn't worked and maybe make modifications to it. I think I'll comment just quickly, some of the things were too restrictive. We tried to be so careful how to protect everyone to do it, we just didn't do anything, and that was a big mistake. We now know that we're in trouble, we need housing, and in our opinion, these are 2 areas that it can be done with private money if we're smart about it instead of using public money. Got anything to say, Bob? Okay.
No.
So,
Doug, sounds great.
Doug, yes?
Would this look at all into the current number of lots that have two domiciles on them that could be made into, I'm not sure, that's not really an accessory apartment, but...
It's not specifically said here, but there's a third component that we talked about it, and it's just been brought up, but for discussion, is the conversion bylaw or slash multi, how two houses on one lot, where possible. There's a way, right now, I think it's in 1980, if you had a great big house and it was built by a certain date, you could convert it into multiple units if you had the right parking and size. But it has to be before that one date.
And you have to show it's been continually occupied as two different families.
No, it could be a giant single family that, I don't know the date, but it could go for, anyways, we want to open it up for discussion to create more. If you have some to...
Planning board's looking at, asked me to look at
microphone.
the cottage concept again, of multiple houses on one lot that you have in Florida.
Why don't you turn that mic?
So we're trying to investigate that concept.
So that's similar, not specifically to your point, but yes, it's the discussion. So we want to come up with lots of ideas, draft bylaws for discussion, invite the public to come in and talk about it in that bylaw process, and hopefully then come back at another meeting like this with you folks after we've hashed it out on the hearing side, and the notices and the public notice are brought out. Just then we bring it forward back to a meeting like this, have it drafted, one more shot at it together, and bring it on to town meeting. And that's our plan, to keep it on our agenda until those things get resolved.
If you've researched multi-unit housing or accessory apartments in other towns and things like that, not only is it a benefit for affordable housing, creating affordable housing, but there are a lot of other benefits as far as reusing existing housing stock. You're conserving land, you're not expanding and using up land that might be conserved. It's greener because you're not adding more materials, you're not using materials, you're reusing a lot of things. So Brian sent us this great link for this information, and I don't know if he has sent it to the selectmen as well, but it was good reading because it really makes a lot of sense to create these bylaws that will allow people to age in place. If you're an elderly couple and you're empty nesters and you have a second floor that's vacant, and you can put a kitchen up there or rent it out. You can stay in your own home as opposed to trying to downsize, because we know that a lot of houses small houses have been torn down and bigger houses placed in it. So you can't move out of a big house in Falmouth into a small house. So there's so many advantages to this.
It's good.
Mary Pat?
I think that is one of the highest priorities we have in town, is to do this.
And that's why we want to push it forward.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I think that whatever we can do to make best use of the housing stock we have, of the land that we have,
Right.
and of the people who have homes that they would like to do something like this with them, but either they're not allowed to or they don't know how.
Right.
I think it's one of the highest priorities.
We're going to have to relax some of the restrictions we put on ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem. And that's really going to be the battle at town meeting, and that's why we want input from everybody and from the public. So we take it to town meeting. It's been a well-thought-out plan. But there's many cities and towns that have done this. We're not this has been done. So we can look at other areas and copy them and modify them to fit our needs. And so that's where we're going to have it on our agenda until we get it done. And that's pretty much our plan.
We're not trailblazing here.
No, we're behind.
And we really need to get on with the process.
Okay. So that was really just an update. We didn't want to get into specifics. We want to announce to you that that's our plan, and we plan to keep going on it hard, and to the public that they should pay attention in the future when these articles come up, because we want to hear from everybody at those, when we get down to the nuts and bolts of it. And then the other thing, I know we're getting close to our deadlines. We want to schedule some more joint meetings for the selectmen and the planning board. We want to talk about definitely having one in December to talk about further housing issues and our coastal resiliency plan. And we don't know, how's your schedule? I know we had a hard time getting this one. We kept bumped and bumped and bumped. And so we would want to really try to put a date out there that we can get on and have an agenda to focus, give more attention to housing and more attention to coastal resiliency, because that's something we're going to be dealing with for the rest of our lives.
Can we do that right now? Set
Yeah,
a date?
I was wondering if that would be one, it might be more appropriate for a Saturday morning workshop as opposed to an evening meeting. And wondering,
Works for me.
December 5th or December 12th, either of those two Saturdays, or
Sounds good?
Yeah.
the parade is the 6th, is that right? Or
I would say no.
Yeah.
I
Parade
have my
is the
calendar.
6th.
Yeah, the parade's the 6th.
I would just think that maybe going to the next weekend
I think
after
so.
that is a better idea.
To the
That sort
12th.
of tends to be a weekend of activities, and
Yeah, that's right, it would be the parade.
that's
that
on
weekend.
Sunday.
Yeah,
so-
we want to skip that, but then after that, we're into Christmas, so
Well-
then they'll be pushing it up.
No, there's
December
another
12th?
one in there.
So Monday?
December,
Okay,
So we'll tentatively put that all in
Did you say the 12th?
erasing.
12th?
No, I'll
So
I'll
could-
be out of town that
December
weekend.
12th?
yes.
Oh,
you all
Saturday.
set with
Only
that?
one
Saturday,
person.
December
It's a
12th.
Saturday workshop.
You'll speak up.
I'll send a note.
You can Skype us.
Okay.
But we
I
don't
didn't want to
do
go
that.
shopping anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Never did.
Okay,
Okay,
well, the next item, I think, is,
similar
Yours,
to
isn't
the
it?
update that you had for the multifamily zoning accessory apartment bylaws, we just wanted to give the planning board an update of an idea that our board is looking forward to, and that is the creation of either a community development director or a department of community development. And we're looking at what some other towns do. It's in our 5-year strategic plan to really be looking at a way of, it's not just redevelopment, but of looking at a department that can be even more looking into the future of either reuse of some ideas about really taking advantage of what we currently have in town. I'm not sure if you want to add a little bit of what we've already found, and we just want to let you know right away, this is what we're thinking, so you know, we don't want you to be surprised that we are considering something like this. It certainly falls into your bailiwick also, but we'll be coming back to you a number of times.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a couple comments, if I may. This came out, of course, fundamentally out of the Selectmen's Strategic Plan retreat work session, which was held in June of this year, which the board has held every year. And this is just a little excerpt from a small part of the discussion, just following a comprehensive discussion of land use planning, housing, permitting, and related town-wide community decision-making. The board voted to establish a goal to create a Department of Community Development and a position of Director of Community Development to help provide leadership and oversight and to develop a thoughtful, comprehensive approach to all areas relative to community development involving all appropriate town departments, offices, and committees. And that was included as one of the pages under action step 1.3 and 1.3.1 as Chairman has indicated, responsibility for the town manager reporting back to the board on making progress and proposals to bring that structure together. There are various models available in different communities for achieving that purpose, and that's something that I know the board intends to look at and that we would be bringing forward, and we look forward to and welcome a shared partnership with the planning board as to your thoughts and ideas as well.
And just, the idea was definitely have discussion about that tonight, but
Right,
we
let's
would
talk
plan on
about
coming
it.
back to you and let you know, we're going to have questions, we're going to have, ask for some suggestions and thoughts about it.
Ralph has one?
Yeah, I would like to know how the EDIC would be a part of that or involved with that or dovetail with it in any way.
That's something to be articulated and discussed, that there's no final answer on that. That was not the first step, that's something that I think would unfold, and we would welcome your making any suggestion that you would have on that, or any member of the EDIC. Again, I think it's an evolving, unfolding process, and with this notification, here's an opportunity to bring good ideas forward and give us the opportunity to integrate them into a comprehensive, workable product.
Susan had one?
Yeah, and just to address Ralph's important question, in terms of the town's sustainability, one of the things, that this idea arose from was housing. There are a lot of people who have, ideas, there are a lot of groups that do housing, and just to try to maximize all in and make all the efforts efficient and come to fruition. And then, so that the discussion began. And then with respect to the EDIC, there's been, really long-standing efforts to have job opportunities for in a variety of areas. Certainly now we have, with our older population, percentage-wise, we have, Falmouth Hospital is a great employer. We've got Hui as another great employer. There are certainly others, but it is something the EDIC continues to work for, to have more opportunities for jobs so that young families can stay and thrive in Falmouth. So that's just one of the areas in terms of economic development and housing. I think you have to always look at them together. One can affect the other. So that was one of the, one of the tangents that the EDIC probably came up.
So we'll certainly be coming back to you with this.
Yeah, because to me, community development director is a very broad statement, and the job description that's about like this.
That's why we're going to have a lot of work ahead.
Yeah, it certainly can be.
Yeah.
Sam?
Yeah, I just want to mention that this kind of position department exists in many of the towns in Massachusetts. And if you look at the history of what's happened in some of our gateway communities with the mill buildings and how they went through this huge economic decline as the economics changed underneath of them. And the purpose of this, of course, they're the people that actually put these things into place to try to revive the economies of these towns by looking at diversification. What could they bring in? Who could they attract to actually use the workforce that they have there? Now, we're in a different position where we're kind of thin on the workforce, quite honestly. But, the demographics are changing, and it's going to affect us. And the purpose of this kind of a department is to take kind of a holistic, futuristic kind of look and say, how can we sustain the kind of economic vitality we have? And what are the kinds of things we need to be looking out for, right? And I'm not sure we got a handle on that in the town right now. And yet there are plenty of models out there that we can tap into.
I put it on the agenda with the agreement this was just going to be an announcement of our intention, not a discussion.
Not digging in deep here tonight,
Yeah.
right?
Because I wanted the planning board to know that we're not going to be putting them on the spot to discuss this at this point, so I really don't want them.
Oh, I for one, am glad to hear this because that's been a point of discussion on the local comprehensive plan committee. And I'm glad that we weren't the ones to surprise you. I think it's an important thing and very, very much needed. And like Sam says, we're not inventing anything here, right? It's something, a town of this size and what we have here, I think it's a necessary thing. So thank you for coming up and presenting that.
Well, I guess next thing on our agenda is for the planning board, our next meeting is Tuesday, the 29th. Everybody all set? Will all be in attendance?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take a board recess. Call our meeting back to order. And Jennifer, thank you so much for being patient, for our Finance Committee representatives for being patient. We'll now hear our capital improvement plan presentation from our Jennifer Petit, our Finance Director.
Thank you. I'm going to pass out an updated plan. And I'll just tell you what the difference is.
I like this size better than
The difference in this spreadsheet is which was discussed, I believe, at a prior Board of Selectmen's meeting, was the owner project manager for the senior center. So that has that money in this to make sure you have the correct spreadsheet. So I apologize for the one that was in your packet. This is the capital, and if you recall, at the last town meeting, we have a lot of capital. We also have some one-time expenses that really don't meet that true definition of capital. So it was requested that we, have two articles, which we do. We have two articles on the warrant. But for ease of presentation, I always like to look at everything together. So I put it all in the spreadsheet, but I will break it out at a later date after the Finance Committee reviews it and put it into the two articles. But I think it's the same funding source. It's always good to look at what the departments need, whether it's capital and non-capital. We review this as a capital one-time from free cash, which is a one-time revenue source. We will post this on the website after tonight so people can take a look at it, and we will transmit it to the Finance Committee. The capital plan being proposed is, make sure I have the right one here, $4.3 million, and that will be supported by free cash. Some of the major items in here are for some consolidated communications, design for town hall, irrigation system for the Falmouth Country Club. We've made recommendations on vehicles and equipment, really trying to make a dent in there. That's under the DPW part of the capital project program. Those are, the major parts of it. We do have some money in there requested for facilities improvement, the marina roof. We have some money for IT. And we also want to start on phase 1 of the portable radios for police, fire, DPW, and MES. As we all know, that they're in dire need of some radios, so we wanted to put it through 3 phases, and so the phase 1 is here, with also some police vehicle radios. And in your packet, you received a lot of backup information on what is being proposed, on what is being recommended on the capital plan. I believe that was submitted to you last Friday for you all to look at. I really was here to, answer some questions and just let you, get your feedback on the capital. We want to give it to the Finance Committee as soon as possible so they can start their work and start meeting with department heads and getting ready for town meeting.
Okay.
Well, I have a question. I'm just going to start on the first page for now. Where it says Town Hall Design, where did I see that? It was like $300,000? Municipal space improvements,
Yep.
Town Hall Design. Is that the implementation of the presentation that we had?
Yes.
Okay. And that's planned for this year? For this next couple?
Yeah, that we get the design work done and have the plans completed so we can begin implementation.
Okay, so the 300,000 was for the design one? And
Correct.
Okay. Then let me go through some. I'm sure somebody else has a question.
I have a big picture issue that Jennifer and I
Okay.
have talked about, and that is about the level of requests and the available funds available to appropriate to them. It's an important story, and I think Jennifer can pick up on that.
Yes, the requests this year were almost $8 million, and we are requesting funding for $4.3 million. So we try to make, I think that's what, we try to make a dent. You want to pick?
I thought the requests were a little lower this year than they have been in the last few years overall, the overall requests. We're seeing a little bit of stabilization in terms of the requests because the funds, we've been able to fund the capital plan pretty robustly in the last several years, and this year is a very high contribution to the capital plan, so those are just positive trends.
So the difference between requests and ability to fund is shrinking.
Right.
coming out of the analysis. I know, Doug, you were part of that on that committee of the board, looking at how we could address long-term capital, and we've been able to make some very good strides in that direction.
And so this plan is all from certified free cash. We're not having to hit any of our capital stabilization fund. We're not having to tap into it for any of this. And so this is taking care of what we usually think of as type 1 and type 2 projects. The projects that are $25,000 and less are worked into here. The projects that are under $1 million are worked into here. Anything over $1 million, we then try to fund through other sources, not through these two processes. So if you're looking for the later expenses of the redoing town hall, that's not in this plan because that would be a higher funding. If you're looking for items like this senior center, we know that's going to be in the future, but that doesn't fit within the types 1 and 2 of the capital improvements.
Yes, I mean, in the future, with the construction of town hall or the senior center, those will be larger, over, $1 million to $3 million projects that we will look at. The senior center's in the capital facility plan, which is a debt exclusion. Town hall, we can discuss that. We are starting to really increase our reserves, so it gives the town a lot more flexibility on how to fund. And what is really good about this is that I think, after you spoke, Heather, is that we always looked at, we could keep up with the capital at $3 million a year. And so we've been able to do that and a little bit more. So we're really starting to, make headway, and the requests are coming down a little bit.
But do we use the capital improvement fund in the Springtown meeting? Is that when we'd funded? This is one-time revenue from the certified free cash.
Right. Yeah, really what should happen is the board should have a policy on when to withdraw from the capital stabilization fund, and we will discuss that, and a policy recommendation will be put before you. But we haven't really wanted to look at that yet because we've been trying to increase that reserve, which we have. But now, as these projects are starting to come about and we're really looking at some changes and how to fund it, we want to look at that. We always, if we can, want to pay cash, for as much as we can while keeping our reserves stable in a good, in a good way and not depleting our reserves, but, where can we pay cash and where is it good to, incur debt and interest rates and things of that nature.
Sam?
I want to pick up on the point that the planning board was making to us, and that's keeping up with the life cycle maintenance issues. And I see sprinkled throughout here are investments toward, maintenance of our infrastructure. I mean, obviously they're dump trucks and that sort of thing. But I get the feeling that, we're putting off some things. And I would really like to have that picture as well, to make sure that we understand, what is it we're not addressing because of the limitations in the amount of funding that's available. What's being pushed off into the future that, we shouldn't be losing track of because it's got to be addressed sooner or later.
Well, I think our needs are documented, and they're documented in this plan, and they're documented in the capital facilities plan, and also in the operating budgets. It's a large community. There's $122 million in the operating budget, and there are monies that we put in the operating budget to keep up with maintenance.
Well, understood, but you just said that you had $8 million worth of requests, and we're only funding $4 million. Okay, what are we putting off?
Okay,
and that's just a picture I don't want to lose sight of,
Yeah, and I guess what I was trying to get at is that it's documented, this is what they needed. It wasn't like it wasn't documented, but let me just elaborate a minute if you don't mind.
Sure.
When you look at the proposals and you look at the requests, you can look at sidewalks and road, and they're asking for $850,000. But we really can't keep up with spending $850,000 a year, so we don't want to fund $850,000. We want to be able to have, enough people and manpower and really get that going. And then, because we don't want to fund something that we can't actually take to completion. So that's one good idea. So, we can answer the specific questions of why we might not fund this year. These are requests. I mean, some of them, that's one good example. Some of them we might think that there's just not a need for that and that we're going to fund it at a lesser amount right now. But it's all well documented, I guess, is what I meant to say.
Okay. The Finance Committee will be looking into it even more closely.
Yeah, I understand.
And we're going to have an opportunity to tonight.
I noticed last year that what we actually spent was $4 million And this year, we're proposing to spend 4.3 million, that's correct? So what was the year before that? I mean, are we in a position now where we can spend more each year than we have in previous years? I know, are our revenues growing so that maybe because we could spend more this year, we might be able to spend more next year? I know you never really can predict.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And the year before, it was around 3 million, and it's documented, in the warrant booklet, but I don't really go back, but it is about 3 million. When I first started, we met with the Capital Improvement Committee every week to come up with a plan and how much we should fund. So we always felt about 3 million a year would keep up with it. Free cash is a one-time funding source, and you never, it can go up and it can go down. It depends on the economy. We've had a very healthy free cash in the last few years. The economy's been doing well. We've had some healthy budget turnbacks. So we always want to kind of stay steady. But the other thing is that just because if we have a high certified free cash doesn't mean we have to spend it. It also meets the Board of Selectmen's goals of having the undesignated fund balance at a certain percentage. It's a reserve, if you will. So you can look at the capital, and if there's an extreme need, you can make it a little bit higher, but, we want to not rely on a high certified free cash because we know that that's unsustainable.
So my other question is, how long or how often would someone's request stay on the list? Let's say it was on last year's list and they didn't make it, and then it's on this year's list and they didn't make it. Is there any policy about how long a request stays on the list or before it can get funded?
All right, that's a great question, because really what you're asking is there'll be a different answer maybe for why we're not funding something. So we always want to show everyone what the department head is requesting. We don't want to get that off here because that's what we're asking them. What are your department's needs, right? So we want them to ask for what they believe their department's needs. In some cases, we might review it and say that's really not a need in your department. Right now, you might see fire's asking for 3 vehicles, and the proposal is less because we think at this time that they could buy a little bit of a less vehicle. So you will see things like that. There's a technician, a fisheries technician. They're asking for a new vehicle. That's a perfect example. Well, we looked at it, and they're using a used one because it's a fisheries tech, so they're driving, a lot of different places. It has some rough, ride, if you will. These, different people use that vehicle. Do they really need a new truck? And so, we looked at that and we said, no, we might recycle another used vehicle for that position. And you'll see that here. So they're asking for it, but we're not funding it. But there's maybe a story behind it. So there's different reasons why, but we will always keep it on the list because, we want to let everyone know what the department head is requesting.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Any other questions? Great. Thank you so much for staying.
Thanks.
For
Thank you.
the extra 5 minutes that we needed.
I could have gone on, but I chose not to.
Next item, discussion concerning the ZBA discussion decision regarding Wind 1. Mr. Duffy or Mr. Sousa, do you want to start us off on our discussion?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate for me to have, suggest that Frank make some comments at this point. I think the board certainly is well aware of the decision that was made in this room this past Thursday night, and that's why it appears on the agenda. That has not yet been filed with the town clerk's office, and that is yet to occur. But I think Frank has some guiding comments that we would welcome.
Thank you, Jim. As Mr. Sousa has pointed out, last Thursday night, which was September 17th, the Board of Appeals held a hearing on the Building Commissioner's determination not to issue a cease and desist order for Wind 1. At the conclusion of the hearing, the Board of Appeals actually took a vote, and they voted 4-1 to overturn the Building Commissioner. The ZBA Special Counsel, Mark Bobrowski, is going to prepare and present to the board this Thursday night a decision and a proposed order. We have not seen that decision and proposed order, and it may take several forms. We probably won't see it until Thursday at the earliest. We assume, however, that the Board of Appeals will probably accept this proposed decision and order of Mr. Bobrowski, that they will sign it, and on Friday morning it will be filed with the town clerk. And that act of filing the proposed order, or actually will no longer be proposed, it will be an actual order, will be start the running of a 20-day appeal period. Under Chapter 48 of the Zoning Enabling Act in Massachusetts, the appeal periods for decisions of zoning boards of appeals is very short. It's 20 days. This 20-day appeal period then presumably will end on the 15th of October, and that period cannot be extended. It's set in stone, so to speak. It is the opinion of the building commissioner and of the special counsel, Diane Tillotson, who's been representing the town before the Board of Appeals, that the town has this 20-day period to determine what its response is going to be to the order, to determine whether to accept it as is, to appeal it, and during that 20-day period, the appeal, the decision on the order would not be enforced. I recommend to this board that you note an executive session for next Monday night, which is your next regularly scheduled meeting, so you can determine what your response is going to be. I would point out to the board that it is appropriate to have an executive session to determine whether or not to file a judicial appeal. Even though the appeal is not pending at the time, the decision to whether or not to file one is a proper subject of executive session. As I said to you, the decision must be made in a timely manner. You have the 20-day period, and you actually don't really have that much time, because if you decide to appeal, you have to leave enough time for an appeal to be prepared and filed. So you've got to act very quickly on this. Also want you to understand that on the 29th of October, the ZBA will hold a similar hearing on the application, on the appeal rather, of the building commissioner's determination not to issue a cease and desist order for Wing 2. We had originally thought that that would be heard on the same night, the 17th of September, but because of the length of time of the first presentation for Wing 1, they ran out of time, so they had to continue the second one. Also on the 29th of October, the Board of Appeals has scheduled to hear to start the hearing rather, on the town's application for a special permit for Wing 1. So that's going to be a very, very busy night. But your immediate future is to determine, first of all, we must see what the board actually says and how they say it and the reasons they give for it. These are all to be determined, or for you to be reviewed to help you determine whether or not to file appeal or not. So that's my immediate recommendation. I'm not commenting on any of the proceedings that went before the Board of Appeals. I'm not commenting, or I'm not even speculating as to what the decision is going to say, although we do know, and let's be honest, we generally know what it's going to be.
But I think any discussion on that without actually having the filed notice would be inappropriate. I do want to announce that in addition to the executive session on Monday, we will be having an open session to discuss the possibility of declaring a special town meeting for this November. With the item to be discussed would be potential bylaw changes concerning wind turbines. And that will be on our agenda item for Monday. Do we have any individual selectmen's reports? Thank you, Mr. Duffy.
Well, I attended on Saturday the Wampanoag celebration of their receipt of their lands and trusts by the federal government, by the Department of Interior and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And I must say that it was an incredible celebration. It was out on their property out on Great Neck Road South, and there must have been a couple hundred people or more in attendance. And the chairman, Sid Cromwell, does a great job managing this whole process in the meeting. But the other thing was they had in the building that they have built there, in front of it, they have kind of like a pit. And after he read certain things, it was mostly in English, some was in Indian language, which I couldn't even begin to even speak to. But he asked a group to sing what they call an honor song. And I don't know if you've ever heard them. These are songs that are sung in the Indian language from centuries ago. And they also have their own drums. So they play the drums and they sing in this Indian language, and it is absolutely incredible. And these honor songs can last for maybe 10 minutes. And there were the new town manager, former police chief, Rodney Collins, is now the town manager. So I sat with him. Former Congressman Delahunt was there because he's done in his new work since being a congressman. He's done a lot to help the tribe be able to get these lands accepted by the federal government. So it was not only the 100 and some acres of land in Mashpee, but also the lands in Taunton. And I guess they have already selected land somewhere along, I'm not exactly sure where it is, for the casino that they plan to build on their land trust. But some were in their native costumes. There were a lot of children there, and it was really, really an amazing celebration. It was just something to really appreciate the culture of the Wampanoags over all these years. I mean, they go back to prior to 1675 when you really think about it. And it was their land in the beginning on Cape Cod. It belonged to the Wampanoags. I had to learn to say it right. It's Wampanoags, not Wampanoag. Some people say Wampanoag, but that's not how you say it. And if you say it in Indian, it's just a little bit different. But anyway, I had an excellent opportunity, and I had a great time, and it was really a good thing to do. So studying the ancient history is probably not a bad thing to really study. And then they also had a celebration before that of the Mashpee Wildlife Preserve. I think it was something like 25 years or more in protection, so I missed that one. I didn't even know that was happening. But the reserve is Falmouth and Mashpee. It includes both towns. So anyway, that's what I did Saturday.
Okay.
Sam?
Three things. Attended the Southeast Regional Economic Development seminar, or forum, I guess is probably the better word. They call it discussion, but I'll call it a forum. It was really hosted by Maria Marasco, who's the Southeast Regional Director for the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. Was really an eye-opener. There were only 3 people from Cape Cod. Maria happens to be from Yarmouth, so she was one of the 3. The other was the new town manager of Provincetown. And then I was there just as a selectman from Falmouth. But the rest of the people were from more or less the gateway communities of Massachusetts, where, of course, they've had huge economic declines. They've got enormous number of people living in low-income housing but without work. And it's been interesting, both this meeting and also at the Massachusetts Municipal Association's annual meeting, to hear that some of these gateway communities are starting to really thrive. They've converted buildings into office spaces, and they've made it themselves attractive for other kinds of businesses. And I think that's really kind of the note that I think we're all kind of singing as we're looking toward developing an economic development department, to ask ourselves, what are the things we need to be looking out for to maintain a sustainable, vibrant economy here in Falmouth, because things are changing. The demographics are changing, but maybe we can't rely strictly on tourist retail business, to sustain us as we have in the past, along with, of course, the infrastructure businesses like healthcare and education and research institutions, and then, of course, the town's employment. So anyway, it was excellent, and it's always good to get other people's perspectives on the challenges that they see and are working on, and to use those as ideas for your own community. So anyway, the other one I want to highlight is the Affordable Housing Committee. I met with them this past week, and I think the one thing that came out of there was really the concern that was reported by Judy Barrett, in that housing demand study that was done last year, and that's the time it's taking developers of affordable housing to get through to actually providing the housing. And, you know, I heard Michael Galasso say that one developer took 7 years from the start. And that's just, I mean, there's no private industry that can afford to have money tied up for that kind of period of time. We have to take a look at how we can, you know, find a more efficient way of going through the proper review for permitting and what have you, but to make these projects take less time and be less onerous for the developers. There's got to be a better way. And I have to say that I heard that, you know, the feeling from some of those developers was that there was an awful lot of stonewalling on the part of town departments, that department members weren't being proactive in telling them, oh, you know, you didn't get this form in. But instead they wait for a month and a half only to find out, oh, it didn't go forward because I didn't get the form in. You know, there were comments like that that were made. I mean, that's just a one terse testimony, but it's something I think we need to take seriously, given the fact that it is taking so long for developers to get, you know, affordable housing units on the market. It's not going away. So, like we've been taking a look at how we can maybe compress the process for sewer hookups in the Little Pond Sewer Service area, I think we need to take a look at the process we're putting our developers through to put affordable housing into the market. The third thing was I attended the emergency preparedness fair at the Gus Canyon. I know I saw Heather and Julian there as well, but what a great community fair that is. It's organized by the Fire and Rescue Department, but supported by the police, the Coast Guard, the Marine Environmental Services, the Service Center, Scouts. You can just go on, the number of organizations that had tables there where they were providing useful information, yes, for emergency support or preparedness, but also just in terms of everyday support for citizens in the community. It was really a neat thing to say, and it's geared for all ages. I got a big kick out of the remotely controlled fire engine with the dog sitting in it that had a remote person talking through the dog, entertaining kids as he's going around through the crowd. It was just a great event, and my hat's off to Kim from the Fire and Rescue Department that kind of has been the lead organizer for it, and she was actually given recognition for that by giving her a medallion. So, and I'll have to defer to Julian because I wasn't actually part of the ceremony as to who the state official was that gave that honor to her. Do you recall who it was?
He was with the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency.
Okay.
But I don't have his name with me. Yeah.
Anyway, so at least she was recognized for her excellent effort in pulling all these groups together.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
Well, I think several of us were at the meeting concerning the Coast Guard and the changes that they're going to make in Woods Hole, and I think there is still a lot of discussion that needs to go on. That was the first meeting. I think when the man continuously used the word, it's a wall, I think that's my visual. So they're going to have to do a lot, I guess, before I think it's not a wall. Also, the other was that I went to the ZBA meeting on Thursday night, and several of us were there. So those are my two meetings this week.
Quickly, I attended with the school administration and also with Substance Abuse and Human Services representatives. We had a very full roundtable, a discussion about bringing the mindfulness program into the schools. There is one program that's already started, I believe it's in the 5th grade, and so the discussion was about expanding the program as much as budgetary constraints would allow. And the program is about teaching kids, starting at a young age, even as low as 1st grade, about coping mechanisms and the connection that has very successfully to really the battle on substance abuse. So you know, sort of a program to start addressing issues and giving kids education and tools earlier, and the commitment on the part of all of the representatives there was very favorable. And then on the opposite end, I also attended at the Democratic Committee meeting, there was that presentation of the substance abuse movie that those two guys recently did in Falmouth. And that's just, if you haven't seen it, it's just a very powerful, kind of shedding a light on the, how big the problem is in Falmouth and how much we need to address it. And then lastly, I was looking at my calendar, I believe it's tomorrow is the military bike ride down the Thursday. Okay.
Wounded
So
Warriors.
Wounded Warriors, I just wanted to make that announcement in case anybody wanted to attend. It's going to start at 9 o'clock in North Falmouth, and I know I usually see most of you down there, so for all of you at home, that's coming up as well. That's it.
Just to add on to Rebecca's comment about the Coast Guard meeting, I did read a letter from us asking them not to demolish the building. They seem fully determined that they will be demolishing the building. We've asked them not to. There will be more meetings, but I do not expect that we're actually going to get that. I just also wanted to point out that Julian did send out a letter to the Mass DEP about asking for a full environmental review on the Steamship Authority's third slip, and then it went out on Monday.
Well, it didn't surprise me, but I read in the paper where the Coast Guard said the building is too small. Well, you can always enlarge a building that's already there. You can go up or out or back or some other way. But I thought saying the building was too small was...
Well, the statement that they made even more strongly than the paper reported is that it's in deteriorating condition. Sam?
I mentioned that, really piggybacking off of a comment that Sue just made about the opiate addiction. We just lost a Falmouth resident this week. And the sad thing is that she had a toddler who's only 3 years old. I'm not going to give any names, but it's in this town. And it's just really sad to see people caught up by dependency on these kinds of things. And it's real, it's here, it's affecting kids. Not necessarily the death of a parent, but the dysfunctionality in families that feeds into their educational process as well. So we really do need to make sure that stays visible to everybody, and that we're trying to provide the support we can whenever possible.
Yes. On September 15th, the week past, I attended a conference in Plymouth that the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association convened on the topic of lessons learned from last winter, including various speakers on public works, public safety, emergency operations, and it included some issues that we'll be discussing with the board's concurrence. I've talked with Chairman Jones about the possibility of having a forum here with the board, possibly October, November kind of time frame about anticipated snow operations with public works for the coming year, which would afford an opportunity for neighborhoods and other interested people to join us and talk about that as well. And I've discussed that with Public Works Director Ray Jack, so I'll be working with Chairman Jones to set a time for that at a mutually agreeable opportunity. Also, I'd like to ask Heather if she might give us a status update on the matter of the Spring Bars Road RFP, which the board had asked to be pursued. Heather, if you would.
Sure. The board authorized the town manager to utilize the affordable housing funds to hire someone to help us put the RFP together and issue that on our behalf. And that progress is moving forward. I have Paul Rashinskis from the Cape Cod Commission has agreed to take that effort on. He's nearly done with his first draft, and that will go out early next week or the end of this week to staff for a first cut review. Our expectation is we will have a final draft plan for the board to endorse, hopefully, on October 19th with an issuance date of October 20th. The timeframes for advertising will mean that the proposals won't be due until late November, early December, but that timeframe is in place. At your next meeting, the board will be asked to declare the property surplus and make it available for disposition.
The October 5th meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
No further report on my end, Mr. Chairman.
I do want to acknowledge that Mr. Suso was scheduled to go off to a conference this upcoming weekend, and because of the issues in dealing with the turbines, he has decided not to, and he will be in town get us ready for that meeting next Monday.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is it possible for us to have a dates for for our selectmen's meetings for October, November, and December?
Sure. So the schedule is that we're going to be meeting this Monday.
Okay.
We'll then be meeting October 5th.
Mm-hmm.
October 12th is Columbus Day. We're going to meet October 19th, October 26th. I will be away on the first week of November, so that's the reason the schedule's a little bit odd. So we'll not be meeting November 2nd, and then town meeting starts November 9th. I would suggest we meet November 16th, because November 23rd is the week of Thanksgiving, and then November 30th. And I haven't looked into December yet, since we're going to now have this workshop on December 12th. That changes a little bit about when we might meet, but that at least gets you through November.
Can you
9,
just send an
16,
email?
and 30, you said for
Fine.
November?
Well,
Send an
the
email
9th is town
with
meeting.
all that.
9th is town meeting.
And so we'll
So
be
that's-
meeting on the 9th and at 6:30. But then I would suggest we
Okay.
meet the 16th after town meeting to be prepared
Okay.
for that. Not meet the week of Thanksgiving and then meet on the 30th.
Thank you very much.
Oh, on the 30th of November?
Yep.
Okay, I missed that one. Thank you.
Any other issues? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Thank you very much for our odd
Okay.
scheduled meetings tonight.